Mitsuhiko's troops below scream in utter shock after the moonlight illuminates the face of the figure atop the dragon clearly. They exclaim in panic, "Isn't that the Miko princess?" They cannot believe that the girl they were hunting as prey has now returned as a predator, leading a legendary dragon army to judge them all for all the betrayals that have occurred. The sky, which is usually clear, has now turned gray, covered by the flapping of countless giant wings. A tense atmosphere envelops the mountains as the dragon army flies in a massive formation across the sharp peaks. On the backs of several dragons, sturdy wooden balcony structures are mounted, carrying human passengers. The residents below can only freeze, watching the giant shadows swallow their territory in a sudden darkness full of horror. There, Mas Mitsuhiko, who had been boasting from the start, is seen flabbergasted. An extraordinary shock hits them. Cries of confusion break out everywhere, to the point that Mitsuhiko is so bewildered he says, "What on earth is this? What is actually happening?" The atmosphere becomes rowdy, but in another corner, Mas Oboro can only stay dead silent. Their faces are deathly pale, drenched in cold sweat pouring down heavily. It is as if they are witnessing a mini-apocalypse in the sudden and highly intimidating appearance of this dragon armada. One of the giant dragons begins to lower its altitude, flying low over the crowd. On its back, the figure of Princess Miko Yotsuha is clearly visible, standing straight with a gaze full of dignity, accompanied by Light, Mei, and Eli, known as Miss Witch of the Great Tower. The Oni witnessing this become increasingly hysterical in confusion. Why is the Miko princess with those dragons? The princess's presence in the midst of creatures considered legends creates a clamor of unanswered questions in the hearts of the people. Disregarding the commotion below, the dragon army continues to advance across valleys and forests in a highly orderly military formation. The scale of this army is truly extraordinary, radiating an aura of power capable of leveling mountains. The focus of their movement is very clear, heading toward the main settlement center on Oni Island. This serves as a strong signal to anyone watching that a major event that will alter history is beginning this very second. Up close, these dragons look far more terrifying. Their eyes glow a bright white without pupils, giving a mystical yet threatening impression. Sharp fangs protrude from their sturdy jaws, ready to tear anything apart. Although they appear highly ferocious and bloodthirsty, their movements are extremely controlled and disciplined. They are not merely wild beasts, but weapons of destruction under the absolute control of someone highly powerful. Total panic finally explodes on the city streets. The Oni people run helter-skelter seeking shelter while screaming hysterically, "Uah! Dragons! Run fast! There are too many dragons!" The sound of crying children and shouts for help echo between the village alleys. In their minds, this is a massive monster attack aimed at destroying their homes and ending all of their lives without exception. Seeing her people terrified, Princess Miko Yotsuha takes a deep breath and begins to speak from atop the dragon. Her clear yet powerful voice echoes in all directions. "My beloved people of Oni Island Nation, please listen to me. These dragons are the pets of Miss Witch of the Giant Tower. They were sent not to harm good Oni." This calm explanation slowly begins to quiet the explosion of anger and fear among the citizens, which had previously almost spun out of control. With the tone changing to become firmer and piercing, the Miko princess continues her speech before the still tense crowd. "The purpose of our coming is to capture the traitors who have committed severe crimes against this nation. To expose their hidden sins, I am collaborating with Miss Witch." This statement serves as a war drum for those corrupt with power, making it clear that her presence is to conduct a massive cleanup. There, Masaboro and Mas Mitsuhiko can also be seen dumbfounded, silent, and looking like idiots hearing what Princess Miko Yotsuha has just said. The atmosphere suddenly falls silent as Princess Miko Yotsuha begins to expose the darkest secret on the island. First of all, I will tell you the truth that has been covered up all this time. The Oni God in our myths does not actually protect us. It is sealed in Mount Oni God because of its dangerous power. This information is like a bolt from the blue for the people, instantly changing their understanding of the sacred history they have revered since childhood. As the climax of her explanation, the Miko princess points to the evil conspiracy of the nobility. in order to weaken the seal of the Oni god. The Kamiju and Shimobashira families had the heart to sacrifice the Miko princesses from generation to generation. This confession directly strikes the faces of the main perpetrators. The crimes tightly wrapped in sacred rituals all this time are finally exposed, triggering sparks of anger that begin to smolder in the hearts of every citizen who hears it. The Oni people listening to the truth appear frozen in disbelief of the atrocity they hear. They look at each other with faces full of sweat and trembling lips. Did they really do something that despicable to our Miko princesses? They whisper in a bitter tone. The trust they had placed in the highest power structures on the island all this time crumbles instantly, leaving behind deep disappointment and an extraordinary sense of horror. The camera now shifts to faces filled with burning anger. The narrative in the shadows reinforces that all the noble traditions they have practiced all this time were just an empty charade. All customary rules and honor turn out to be mere falsehoods, a guise used by the rulers to cover up unforgivable crimes. The feeling of being betrayed by their own leaders creates a wound far more painful than a dragon attack. On the other side, we are shown Mas Mitsuhiko looking increasingly panicked, listening to the realist facts as Princess Miko Yotsuha speaks in a tone full of restrained hatred. She reveals the bitter fact that for personal interest and greed, the Kamiju and Shimobashira families have massively manipulated history. They have not only deceived the people, but also manipulated the fate of the Miko princesses for centuries to carry out the foul plans they drafted in the darkness of their government offices. Princess Miko Yotsuha speaks again, revealing the ultimate goal of the traitors. The real purpose of all these sacrifices is to resurrect the Oni god. They intend to control its power so they can hold absolute power and do whatever they want without anyone being able to stop them. The crazy ambition to become gods over the Oni land is now clearly displayed, making the evil intent of the nobles look even more disgusting in the eyes of the public. On the other hand, one of the high-ranking Oni from the Shimobashira clan who feels pushed into a corner begins to lose control. With a resentful and panicked face, he screams hysterically, giving an order, "Quick! Stop them right now!" He realizes that the dark secrets regarding the sacrifices, human enslavement, and their personal ambitions have been fully exposed in public. The fear of a mass riot makes the usually arrogant ruler look highly pathetic and cornered. Princess Miko Yotsuha stands even firmer, reaffirming her position alongside her ally. "Thanks to the help of Miss Witch of the Giant Tower, I finally have the power and evidence to expose these grave sins," she asserts. The cooperation between the princess and the witch is the main key to tearing down the wall of ancient conspiracy that has shrouded Oni Island in darkness for hundreds of years. Now, there is no longer a place for the traitors to hide. The narrative brings us back to a forgotten past. It is revealed that the Oni god was successfully sealed not because of the great power of the noble families, as written in school history books. On the contrary, the seal exists purely due to the sincere and holy sacrifice of the first Miko princess. This historical fact completely contradicts the propaganda spread by the ruling families all this time to legitimize their position and absolute power. The storyline continues to the origins of the founding of this nation. Touched by the selfless sacrifice of the first Miko princess, the ancestors of the Oni race decided to unite and end intertribal warfare. With a sincere intent to preserve the legacy of that struggle, they worked together to build a civilization until finally the strong nation of Oni Island could be established. This union was originally based on respect, not on the oppression of the nobles. The Miko princess explains the secret tradition closely guarded by the Miko all this time. We always remember the services of our predecessors, so that the holy intention of the first Miko princess is not defiled by the rottenness of the nobles. We continue to gather and support one another from generation to generation. They are the guardians of the flame of truth, moving underground, waiting for the right moment like today to explode the truth and restore the honor of the Miko title that has been stained. Closing her soul-stirring call, the Miko princess asserts that this struggle belongs to all the people. This is not just my struggle or the Miko's, but belongs to every soul that loves this land. She believes that among the Oni crowd, there are still many who possess the courage and iron resolve to uphold justice. With the support of the people and the power of the dragons, she is ready to lead a revolution to cleanse Oni Island from the roots of betrayal. The camera zooms in very close on Princess Miko Yotsuha's face, showing lines of anger that can no longer be contained. As she speaks, her sharp fangs are visible behind her lips, showing the strong identity of Oni blood within her. With a voice trembling with emotion, she emphasizes that the sincere feelings of the people and the Mikos must never be betrayed again. Her resolve is set to end the long cycle of suffering maintained all this time by the systematic lies of the nobles. Princess Miko Yotsuha's anger reaches its peak as she points toward the ruler's castle. She declares that most of the Kamiju and Shimobashira families have defiled the honor of their ancestors with heinous deeds even more despicable than wild animals. As the Miko princess bearing the burden of tradition, and as a citizen who loves Oni Island, she firmly asserts that she will never grant even a bit of forgiveness for their sins. Mas Mitsuhiko, Mas Oboro, and one of the high-ranking members of the Shimobashira clan instantly feel completely pressured and utterly shocked hearing the declaration of war explicitly delivered by Princess Miko Yotsuha just now. In fact, those words become highly terrifying knowing that standing behind the princess is the Witch of the Great Tower, whose name has been rising like crazy lately because of her power and cruelty. Next, directly without any dilly-dallying, a giant dragon ridden by the Miko princess suddenly flaps its wings and swoops sharply past the steep mountain slope. Strong winds whip against the princess's clothes, yet she remains standing firm while exclaiming that she has borrowed great power from Miss Witch of the giant tower to uphold justice. The dragon's aggressive movement serves as a clear sign that the time for negotiation is up and concrete action to overthrow the traitors is starting immediately. The vast sky of Oni Island is now completely dominated by the wing beats of the dragon army, numbering in the thousands. The Miko princess calls out from the sky in a thundering voice, declaring that her primary goal is to capture and punish the traitors without exception. She gives a stern warning to anyone attempting to hide the perpetrators. There will be no hiding hole deep enough to let them escape from the coming punishment. Seeing the civilians beginning to panic, the Miko princess immediately gives strict instructions to prevent casualties. To my uninvolved people, stay calm and do not cause a commotion. Go inside your houses and follow our instructions. She repeats the command multiple times so that her voice reaches every corner of the village. Her focus is very clear, which is to ensure the people remain safe during the massive cleanup operation against the nobility. The Oni people on the ground look up toward the sky with wide eyes and racing breath. As the giant dragons begin to descend near the rooftops of houses, shouts of "Ua" and cries of fear break out in several spots. However, amidst the commotion, the Miko princess's message echoing from the sky provides a glimmer of hope. Those who are innocent try to calm themselves and seek shelter, hoping this storm of chaos will pass quickly. Several dragons land with a loud thud, deploying a combat maid squad standing in a highly disciplined formation. Wearing uniforms that are elegant yet functional for war, they immediately spread out while continuing to urge the citizens to remain calm. One of the squad leaders, with a sharp and spirited gaze, raises her weapon high and declares, "Let us begin," as a sign of the start of total territorial enforcement operations. A magical atmosphere suddenly fills the air as the members of the maid squad begin activating their magic. A bright white light radiates from their bodies, and instantly, beautiful wings of light that nevertheless emit an aura of immense power emerge from their backs. This magical power from the giant tower signifies that they are no ordinary servants, but an elite force ready to shatter any defense to execute the Miko princess's decree of justice. Now, the combat maid squad is on full alert on top of the balconies carried by the dragons. Their hands tightly grip long, glistening spears and magic-reinforced shields. Their eyes stare sharply towards strategic targets on Oni Island. Their readiness demonstrates extraordinary professionalism. They are highly efficient combat machines, ready to carry out duties without hesitation to end the corrupt regime. With a synchronized movement, the Maid Squad leaps down from the sky. Their wings of light unfold wide, checking their fall and allowing them to dive fly at high speed. They form a neat combat formation in the air, resembling a rain of light descending from heaven. Their goal is only one: to surround the hiding locations of the traitors and ensure not a single escape route remains for them. The view in the sky over the Oni settlement now looks extraordinary, yet terrifying to anyone watching. The Maid Squad fills the sky, descending en masse on a scale resembling a major invasion. The Oni people watching from below can only freeze, with faces full of fear. The combination of wings of light, spears, and shields glistening among the swarm of dragons creates a visual of warfare that is perfect and unparalleled in the island's history. As soon as their feet touch the ground, the Maid Squad leader gives strict, indisputable instructions. According to plan, we will take over all strategic facilities and the main gates. The entire squad responds with a simultaneous shout that shakes the earth, ready. The overflowing spirit of this squad marks the beginning of a forced yet legitimate transition of power from the hands of the traitors back into the hands of the people through the princess. Minor panic still occurs on several streets as the Maid Squad begins to push into the heart of the settlement. Some residents run away in fear while screaming, trying to avoid the marching steps of the troops. However, the Maid Squad moves highly efficiently. They use their spears only to secure areas and blockade streets, without harming a single civilian complying with the Miko Princess's instruction to stay quiet. In the midst of the tense atmosphere, a strange yet beautiful melody suddenly wafts through the air. The clear sound of violin music travels to the ears of the Oni people, making those who were previously hysterical slowly grow quiet as if hypnotized. Glowing magical musical notes are seen physically floating in the air, creating a mystical atmosphere that is both soothing and intimidating, enveloping the entire battlefield in an aura of strange serenity. The source of the melody turns out to be a mysterious violinist who is a subordinate of Light, namely Orca, the phantom musician. The elegant strain of his violin melody floats gracefully in the air, while continuing to draw his bow across the violin with smooth movements. He addresses the people in a very calm and soothing voice. Ladies and gentlemen, do not panic. Stay in your places. His magical music is no mere entertainment, but a crowd-calming spell so that the process of arresting the high-ranking Oni can proceed smoothly without unnecessary casualties. In the night sky, we are treated to a very cool sight, and how majestic the Maid Squad is flying in the night sky. Their wings of light glow with rainbow colors that contrast heavily against the deep darkness of the Oni Island sky. Among them, giant dragons fly with a powerful blackish aura. The blend between the beauty of magical light and the ferocity of giant dragons creates an unparalleled aerial combat formation, symbolizing a new hope in the midst of historical darkness. From a distance, Oni Island looks as if it is filled with spots of light descending from the sky, marking the landing points of the Maid Squad. The high-ranking Oni, watching this sight from their palace balconies, can only murmur briefly in weak voices. They fully realize that the golden era they built upon lies has now collapsed. There is no longer a way out, no longer a place to flee. There, Mas Oboro and Mas Mitsuhiko can be seen looking extremely pale, their bodies trembling violently, seeing the Maid Squad already landed right before their eyes. Cold sweat pours down heavily, drenching the luxurious clothing that now means absolutely nothing. An expression of deep fear adorns their faces as they realize that the Miko Princess's counterattack goes far beyond anything they had ever imagined in their cunning plans all this time. Serving as a sign of the end of the Dark Era, a giant magic message appears in the form of glowing writing in the air. The sentence can be clearly read by everyone, namely, "I have come to pass divine judgment." This is no mere threat, but an absolute verdict that the time for the traitors to atone for their sins has arrived. Justice that has long slumbered now awakens with full force to cleanse Oni Island. A violent tremor occurs as a giant dragon lands right in front of Mas Oboro and Mas Mitsuhiko, as well as their troops who are trying to escape. The beast growls low, making those high-ranking figures look extremely small and helpless beneath its shadow. They are now surrounded between the gates of the sacred shrine they once stained with fake rituals. There is no longer an opening to run. They are caught between past sins and deadly consequences right before their eyes. Masaburo and Mas Mitsuhiko look at one another with the remnants of shattered hope. Their faces are filled with total shock, as if still in disbelief that their plans could fall apart this quickly. The atmosphere appearing around them depicts the chaos of their minds, which have suddenly reached a dead end. All the cunning strategies they compiled over decades are shattered to pieces in just one terrifying night. The Miko princess steps toward the dragon's back, standing tall with the dignity of a true leader before the traitors. Accompanied by her comrades, who are ready for battle, she glares sharply at her enemies. Her gaze no longer shows sadness, but absolute authority instead. In a cold and piercing voice, she calls out to them, "For traitors like you, the time has come to pay for everything." In a large, dramatically colored panel, the Miko princess screams with all the strength and emotion she has bottled up all this time. Her face depicts a burning holy rage as she asserts to the bastards who sacrificed generations of Mikos. "There is no mercy for bastards like you." This statement serves as a highly powerful conclusion, marking the beginning of a new era where justice is upheld with an iron fist without mercy. From a high altitude, the main area of the Kamiju clan looks so grand yet tense. Giant dragons cleave through the clouds, carrying large platforms on their backs, serving as aerial logistical transport. Beneath them, traditional Japanese architecture with curved roofs stands sturdy amidst clear ponds and artistic wooden bridges. Although appearing calm, the guards moving back and forth on the ground show that this clan is on high alert. In the midst of that activity, Chaos stands tall, giving instructions to the ferry maids. Execute the plan according to schedule, let there be no delays. He emphasizes the importance of efficiency in using the prepared magical cards. Use your cards only according to the field needs. Do not waste resources on unnecessary things, but make sure the situation remains under full control. Chaos's expression turns increasingly serious as he provides additional details. Prioritize the evacuation of civilians and ensure the injured receive immediate treatment. However, he pauses his sentence with a sharp gaze. Neutralize anyone foolish enough to use violence without understanding their current position. If anything occurs that is outside the scenario or your control, contact me immediately via the main transmission line. Receiving the order, the ferry maids with glistening transparent wings begin to flap their wings simultaneously. Shouts of "Understood!" echo in the air, showing high loyalty and combat readiness. In an instant, they shoot into the sky, scattering toward the designated coordinates like particles of light, descending to surround the entire strategic area belonging to the Kamiju clan. A surprise comes from the sky. The ferry maid squad lands gracefully yet menacingly, immediately forming a line surrounding the main building's courtyard. The guarding soldiers of the Oni clan are heavily startled. They did not expect their air defenses to be penetrated so easily. The atmosphere that was once quiet is now filled with the sound of scraping armor as the Oni begin to ready themselves with full hesitation on their faces. A ferry maid steps forward as a negotiator. "Put down your weapons and follow our instructions if you want to be safe," she says calmly. A furious Oni soldier shouts, "You here! How dare you set foot on our land?" However, the ferry only stares at him flatly and replies, "We understand your loyalty, but do you really want to ignore the decree delivered by the Miko princess?" A tense silence envelops the courtyard. The Miko princess's name seems to be a heavy burden on the shoulders of the Oni soldiers. Cold sweat pours down and hesitation is clearly visible from their trembling hands. One by one, clanging metallic sounds are heard as swords and spears are dropped to the ground. They choose to surrender, while the ferry maids remain standing alert, their weapons still aimed at any movement, no matter how small. However, that peace does not last long for everyone. Several stubborn soldiers refuse to submit. One of them draws his sword again, full of rage. "Silence! We will not tolerate your insolence in the grand territory of the Kamiju clan," he shouts. provoking his other comrades. To him, surrendering to these tiny fairies is the greatest insult to their dignity as Oni soldiers. Seeing that defiance, the fairy maid wastes no time arguing. The gaze in her eyes sharpens, emitting a deadly aura of authority. Confirmation. Active resistance detected, she says through her magic communication device. Without hesitation, she gives a brief yet firm command to her unit. Begin neutralization process immediately. Use the minimal power necessary to incapacitate the target. A counterattack occurs in the blink of an eye. The fairy maid thrusts her staff toward the resisting soldier, releasing a stream of blue electricity that strikes violently. Ja! The soldier screams as his body goes stiff from the energy shock. The electrical effect propagates to the surrounding area, paralyzing the nerves of the rebels within a radius of several meters until they fall flat to the ground without being able to offer further resistance. The main courtyard of the Kamiju clan has now completely fallen into the hands of the fairy maid squad. The Oni soldiers who had briefly resisted lie helpless on the ground, though their lives remain intact. The fairy troops now stand firm, with spears and shields forming a perfect barricade. There are no more shouts of war. All that remains is absolute obedience, under the strict supervision of those loyal servants who descended from the sky. On the other side of the building, Chaos walks with calm steps down the long wooden corridor. His presence appears highly intimidating, escorted by 4 fairy maids armed with spears guarding him from all sides. Along the hallway, the remaining members of the Oni clan choose to kneel and bow their heads. They no longer dare to look Chaos in the eye, acknowledging the total defeat of their clan before this new power. As Chaos's entourage passes by, 2 members of the Oni clan appear to shiver in fear. Cold sweat drenches their deathly pale faces. "Please forgive us. We were only following orders." One of them sobs, her voice nearly gone due to anxiety. They look at Chaos with a pleading gaze, as if their lives hang by a thread merely by being near the man leading the invasion. Chaos paused his steps for a moment and stared at them with a calm, flat face. "Calm down. We have no intention of hurting you as long as you are cooperative," he said briefly. That statement was not merely a formality, but a reflection of Light's direct order to him. Light had advised him very clearly that their goal was not senseless bloodshed, but rather maintaining order and gathering information. Without wasting more time, Chaos gave a brief instruction to his guards. "Take them out and gather them with the others in the evacuation area," he ordered while pointing toward the exit. The fairy maids immediately moved to execute the order efficiently, herding the terrified clan members toward a safer place before the main search operation began inside the building. Chaos's search led him to a giant library that looked chaotic. Bookshelves, as high as the ceiling, were filled with ancient literature, but many scrolls and documents were scattered on the floor, as if someone had just tried to find or hide something in a hurry. Chaos stood at the threshold, sweeping his gaze across the room to look for clues that might have been missed visually. In the silence of the library, Chaos continued to observe every detail carefully. Meanwhile, one of the fairy maids behind him began to work very meticulously. She combed through the rows of books on the dark wooden shelves, her fingers feeling the gaps between books in search of physical irregularities. They knew that in a place like this, the most valuable information is usually not placed in a spot visible to the naked eye. The search yielded results. A fairy maid's finger pressed an old book with a leather cover that appeared slightly protruding from the shelf. A faint click sound was heard, followed by the sound of heavy wood scraping. The ancient mechanism hidden behind the wall began to work, causing the large bookshelf to slide slowly to the side, revealing a darkness neatly kept behind the library wall. After the shelf opened completely, a wooden staircase leading to a basement was revealed. Chaos stood in front of the secret door, staring at the darkness down there with a slight sigh. Why do people like them always like things like this? Basements and secret mechanisms. Truly a cliché, he muttered in wonder. Even though he knew this path was what would lead him to the answers they were looking for. Chaos and a fairy maid began descending the creaking wooden stairs toward an underground tunnel reinforced with old wooden beams. In the midst of the humid underground silence, Chaos's mind drifted back to the moment at the Naraku sub-district office. He remembered clearly Light's voice saying, I have a special task for you, Chaos. Now, he realized how important this task was for the grand plan they were currently executing. In Chaos's memory, the figure of Light was seen giving deep instructions behind his desk filled with documents. With a calm yet authoritative tone, Light explained that the main area of the Kamiju clan was not just a military headquarters. The place held dark secrets in the form of high-level research documents, especially regarding forbidden methodologies for controlling the power of the legendary Oni god. Light gave a serious emphasis, his eyes staring sharply at Chaos. Those documents are undeniable proof of their involvement in forbidden experiments, including horrific records about human sacrifices for the Oni god, he asserted. He gave an absolute order for Chaos to maintain the integrity of those papers. Do not let a single sheet be torn, let alone burned. We need that evidence intact to judge them. Chaos listened to every word with a serious face and unshakable obedience. He understood that this mission was not merely physical conquest, but a data security mission that was very crucial for the future. Light asked him to take over command directly in the field, so that there wouldn't be the slightest error. For Chaos, this order was a sacred mandate that he had to complete with absolute perfection. Back to reality, Chaos continued stepping down the humid underground tunnel, followed by his personal ferry maid. In his mind, there was a narrative acknowledging his current position. After once experiencing a crushing defeat at Light's hands, Chaos felt that it was only natural for him to serve and follow every order of that man. Light's power had subdued his pride, turning him into a loyal follower. The narrative continued with an expression of deep feeling. For Chaos, being entrusted with a task as sensitive and important as this was not just a burden, but a great honor. He saw this as a sign of extraordinary trust from Light toward him. In a world full of betrayal, being given the responsibility to secure the enemy's most valuable assets was proof that Light relied on him greatly. Chaos continued walking with a flat expression in the dimly lit underground hallway. Although his face appeared emotionless, his inner self was filled with a burning resolve. The narrative in this image confirmed his commitment as a subordinate to try as hard as possible. He would not let there be any gap for failure, because for him, meeting Light's expectations was the only way to prove his newfound loyalty and self-worth. Suddenly, Chaos's steps stopped abruptly. His senses caught movement at the end of the vast underground tunnel. There, he found a group of people from the Oni clan who were gathering in panic. Chaos's sudden presence appearing from behind the shadows made them jolt violently. Expressions of shock and fear were clearly visible on the faces of the Oni, who thought their secret hiding place was safe from reach. A high-ranking member of the Oni clan, in luxurious but disheveled clothing, shouted in a harsh tone full of anger. "Insolent! How could you get in here?" he screamed. He stated that this basement was the highest secret known only to a handful of chosen people in the Kamiju clan. Arrogantly, he demanded that Chaos immediately state his identity, as if his status still held meaning in that situation. Behind the high-ranking official, other Oni soldiers were seen busy with piles of large open chests. Instead of securing the research documents Chaos was looking for, they were busy moving treasures in the form of gold, sparkling jewelry, and other valuable items. They looked greedy, trying to save material wealth in the midst of their clan's collapse, without realizing that death was standing right before them. Responding to that taunt filled with anger and arrogance, Chaos showed no excessive reaction. He just stood frozen, staring at the Oni group with a very cold and empty gaze. His flat expression made it seem as if he were looking at a collection of insignificant insects. The silence created by Chaos actually felt more intimidating than the harsh shouting of the high-ranking clan official earlier. Chaos finally spoke. But what came out was a sharp sarcasm with a piercing tone. "You are even ignoring your own clan's secret documents," he said while glancing at the jewelry chests. He mocked how low their priorities were, choosing to prioritize material wealth over the safety of their lives or the honor of important documents. For Chaos, their actions were clear proof of a highly pathetic moral depravity. That insult made the high-ranking official of the Kamiju clan even more furious. His face turned red with rage, the veins in his neck bulging as he shouted again with full wrath. "You insolent stranger! Do you not know who I am? I am the holder of authority in this land," he yelled haughtily, trying to cover his fear with the high volume of his voice, even though his position was already very cornered at the end of the tunnel. Seeing his master lose control, a subordinate named Sujin tried to calm the situation. "Please calm yourself, my lord," he said, while stepping forward. With keen eyes, Sujin analyzed the appearance of the fairy maids behind Chaos. Based on their uniforms and wings, they are most likely an elite unit under the Witch of the Great Tower who is rumored to exist, he whispered, giving a strategic warning. The Oni group began to discuss in low and anxious voices in that narrow hallway. They wondered if the witch's subordinates were that great that they could penetrate protective spells and find this hidden area. However, their fear slowly changed. One of them began to incite with a cunning tone, saying that the appearance of the enemy in this isolated place was actually a rare golden opportunity. A dirty tactic began to be formulated among them. Their cunning minds revolved around capturing the two fairy maids accompanying Chaos. They thought that if they succeeded in making the fairies hostages, they would have a strong bargaining position to fight back or even escape the pursuit of the Witch of the Great Tower. To them, these women were the key to survival, as well as the perfect tool for retaliation. They continued to incite their master with words that manipulated the situation. That witch woman always talks about idealistic nonsense like absolute human freedom. A person who acts self-righteous like her surely wouldn't have the heart to ignore her subordinates who are being held hostage, they said convincingly. They believed that the enemy's morality was the biggest weakness they could exploit to turn the situation around after being cornered. The image focus showed a small, creepy detail. Sugin's cunning smile spreading at the corner of his lips. He was perfecting a very rotten plan in his head. His slick eyes glinted as he imagined the success of this hostage plan. Sujin didn't just want to survive. He wanted to gain profit from this chaos, and his cunning brain was already working far beyond the interests of the clan he served. Sugen grinned broadly, staring at the fairy maids with a gaze that was condescending, yet full of lust. "The faces and bodies of these fairies are truly top class," he praised, in a disgusting tone. In his perverted mind, he was already planning to sell the women to the black market on the main continent once they reached a safe distance. To him, Chaos's subordinates were nothing more than highly valuable trade commodities. His evil plan escalated as he imagined their journey back. "We can enjoy these women throughout the journey to the main continent," he said, without shame. He was very certain that many factions out there who were hostile to the Witch of the Great Tower would pay handsomely to obtain the witch's toys. This plan was met with cynical chuckles from the other Oni clan members in the darkness. The other Oni clan members appeared amazed and praised Sujin with full admiration. "Ooh! Not only strong in fighting, it turns out you are also brilliant in strategy. As expected from a man as great as you, Sujin," they praised. Sujin looked very proud. He fanned himself with an arrogant style, enjoying the flattery as if his rotten plan were an extraordinarily proud military achievement. The high-ranking member of the Kamiju clan, thirsty for an instant solution, gave his final approval. "All right, do not waste any more time. Just capture them immediately," he shouted enthusiastically, as if victory were already in hand. Sujin bowed respectfully, with a smile still plastered on his face. "I will execute it immediately, according to your orders. My lord," he replied obediently, while starting to prepare himself to attack the women behind Chaos. Sujin began stepping forward with full confidence, carrying his large sword on his shoulder in a demeaning style. On the other hand, Chaos remained standing still, without turning around in the slightest. He stood with his back to them with an unnatural calm, as if all the rotten conversation and capture plans he had just heard were merely the noise of passing wind that didn't threaten his presence in that dark hallway at all. Just before the clash occurred, a highly sharp stare-down broke out between Chaos and Sujin. Chaos finally turned his head slightly, maintaining his chilling, flat expression. Conversely, Sujin stared at him with a wide, demeaning smirk, feeling that with the number of people and his hostage plan, he had the upper hand. A mental battle occurred between them. where Oni arrogance faced the cold calm of the envoy. Chaos finally spoke, his voice sounding very low and full of deadly sarcasm. "So, you still adhere to the law of the jungle, eh?" he asked rhetorically. He continued that until this very second, perhaps they did indeed feel like they were the strongest in this isolated little island nation. However, his tone implied that their narrow world would soon be destroyed when they realized how small their power was in the outside world. Chaos's gaze sharpened, emitting a cold aura that made the air around him feel frozen. "You speak as if you understand the world, even though you don't even have the basic concept of protecting the weak," he hissed. He mocked them as a collection of greedy people who only worshipped material goods. "Do you really not know what the pride of a strong person is? True power exists to support, not to steal in a cowardly manner." Hearing that, Sujin actually laughed dismissively. He grinned broadly, staring at Chaos with a disdainful gaze, as if listening to the babbling of a naive child. "You talk about pride? It seems you have a big misunderstanding about the true meaning of the law of the jungle," he mocked back. To him, the morality Chaos spoke of was just useless trash that would soon be buried along with its owner in this humid basement. Sugin's gaze turned savage, emitting a bloodthirsty predatory instinct. He asserted his cruel life philosophy in a loud voice. In this world, the strong party does not need to provide protection. It is only fitting that the strong oppress the weak to prove their position, he asserted. To him, the food chain was the only valid law, and he felt he was at the top of that chain right now. Sujin continued to degrade Chaos's dignity, calling him no more than a lowly human created just to be exploited by the Oni. "You only exist for us to stomp and oppress," he said haughtily. He added, with a highly painful, mocking tone, "If you want to complain about this injustice, then blame yourself for being born so weak and pathetic. Your weakness is your greatest sin." Chaos only responded with extraordinary calm, as if Sugin's babbling were merely passing wind. He listened to Sugin's confession about his careless past with weary eyes, appearing to contemplate something in silence. Behind his flat face, Chaos seemed to be looking at a reflection of those who had once fallen due to arrogance, but he remained alert to every movement, no matter how small, from his opponent. Sujin continued his story with a bitter tone, admitting that his carelessness in the past had once ended in a humiliating defeat by a human witch. However, his gaze was now filled with dark resolve. "I have learned from that pain. I will never act carelessly again from now on," he asserted. He was certain that this time, with preparation and an advantageous location, defeat would not be repeated. Sujin began setting his combat stance, mocking Chaos's trap position. "In this narrow hallway, I am the 1-inch control," he exclaimed. He belittled Chaos and stated that Chaos's large scythe weapon would be useless here. If you had a brain, you would realize that it's impossible to swing a scythe that big in a place this narrow without hitting the walls. You have trapped yourself in a pit of death. Sugin's insults reached their peak when he called Chaos a lowly human for the umpteenth time. With overflowing arrogance, he gripped his weapon tightly. "I will give you a little mercy," he said with a horrific grin. "I will end your life in a single slash, so you won't have to feel suffering any longer. Consider this the last gift from an Oni to you." While stepping forward slowly, Sujin also glanced toward the fairy maids behind Chaos with a look full of lust. "After I finish this poor man, it's your turn," he threatened. He said with a cunning tone that he would take care of those women well and gently in their captivity. That threat was intended to break Chaos's focus, but the fairy maids remained standing tall without showing any fear. With overflowing anger, Sugin finally lunged forward. "Die!" he shouted loudly, his voice echoing along the tunnel. He swung his sword with extraordinary speed, cutting through the air toward Chaos's neck. "Rest in peace on your journey to the afterlife," he exclaimed, certain that his attack could not possibly be avoided or parried by Chaos in that highly restricted space. Facing that fatal attack, Chaos remained unfazed. There was no fear or doubt in his cold eyes. With a highly efficient movement, he had actually already gripped his scythe handle in a steady position. Even though the room was narrow, He appeared to have mastered every inch of the area. He prepared to release a counterattack whose speed would exceed every logical calculation Sujin possessed. In a single movement, barely visible to the naked eye, Chaos performed a highly devastating reverse slash. The attack was not merely a physical slash, but created a destructive wave of black energy. Sugin's body was thrown backward very hard, as if hit by a train. The weapon he had previously boasted about flew from his grasp and was thrown far away, shattered to pieces by the impact of the energy. Sujin, who had been so arrogant, now looked highly pathetic. He lay with a face full of disbelief and extraordinary pain. A clean slash from Chaos had completely destroyed his defenses. He let out a stifled scream, trying to understand how a human he had belittled could possess such power. His arrogance was shattered to pieces along with his broken bones. Seeing their leader lying helpless, 2 other Oni clan members froze in shock. The Oni holding the treasure chest trembled violently until the jewelry rattled. They stared in shock at the extraordinary power Chaos had shown. Their logic about the strong oppress the weak now turned back to attack them in the most brutal way. Deep fear began to spread among them. The Kamiju clan high-ranking official, who had been standing haughtily in the back, now could only roar in pain. The impact of Chaos's attack had actually spread widely, destroying the structures around him. His body felt shattered by the powerful shockwave. He let out a long scream, a roar full of despair, upon realizing that his authority and power meant absolutely nothing before the figure he called a lowly human. The sheer power of Chaos's attack resulted in severe damage to the underground tunnel structure. The walls cracked and the ceiling shook violently. The treasure chests they had boasted about were destroyed, scattered by the energy blast. Gold, gems, and other valuable jewelry were thrown in all directions, scattered on the ground like worthless trash. The wealth they had tried to save was now ruined amidst the dust of the rubble. After the dust settled, the area was filled with an ironic sight. Treasures of gems and gold fell scattered, burying the bodies of the Oni who had fallen. Sujin and his men lay unconscious with white eyes showing absolute defeat. They lay amidst the luxury they had previously exalted. Now, that wealth only served as decoration for their humiliating defeat. While holding his scythe, which was still emitting a dark aura, Chaos explained the secret of his power. "This is the scythe of Chaos's," he said coldly. He explained that this weapon possessed unique magical properties that could not be parried by magic or ordinary weapons. This scythe is not blocked by physical matter like walls, soil, or floors. It will still reach its target without losing momentum, he explained regarding the ease of the earlier attack. With an expression full of dignity, Chaos gave his final words regarding morality. Power without dignity is merely savagery. Those bastards who have forgotten the pride of being a strong person are creatures far worse than even wild beasts, he asserted. To him, these Oni were not worthy of being called soldiers. They were merely parasites who used power to oppress without possessing a shred of integrity. Chaos murmured softly, expressing his disgust at the moral rot he had encountered. One of the fairy maids approached politely. "Chaos, is the situation here fully under control?" she asked gently. Although she understood the reason these Oni were fighting, she still felt worried about the existence of any remaining clan members who might try to escape through secret paths they had not yet found within this complex. Chaos responded to his servant's concern with a very calm gaze, as if everything were already included in his calculations. "Have you forgotten who is guarding the exit?" he asked back. He reminded her that Ice Heat had been assigned specifically to wait along the escape routes that might be taken by the remnants of the Kamiju clan members. No gaps were left open in this enforcement plan. Chaos showed a slightly tired expression, as if this whole drama were too boring for him. "Well, you are too worried," he muttered softly while sheathing his weapon. He knew very well that even if anyone managed to escape from this basement tunnel, they would only fall into the hands of his other teammates. The escape situation was already fully under the control of the elite team deployed by Light. The atmosphere shifted to the outside area, specifically to a quiet river pier at night. A small boat was moored silently near a wooden bridge beside a traditional hut with a water wheel that continued to turn slowly. The background of dark hills added to the feeling of silence and isolation. This place looked peaceful, but behind that calm, an ambush was being prepared to welcome the escapees. In front of the small hut, several members of the Oni clan who had been captured were visible. Their bodies were tied tightly with ropes, showing that their escape attempt had failed completely. The narrative explained that Master Light had personally asked someone to secure the leader of the Kamiju clan, who was trying to escape via the waterway. The escape plan they thought was highly secret had actually been read from the start by Light. A character appeared from behind the shadows at the pier location. He stood in an alert stance, full of determination to prove his abilities. Last time I felt very unlucky because of a certain weird person who disturbed me, he muttered, reflecting on his previous failure. However, now he felt that good luck was on his side. The opportunity to capture a high-profile target was right before his eyes, and he would not waste it. The character, who turns out to be Ice Heat, exclaimed with burning spirit, "I will capture this important target to show my loyalty to the master," he shouted, full of conviction. As one of Light's loyal subordinates, he promised to carry out this order with absolute perfection. He would not let a single high-ranking clan member escape from the clutches of the law that had been prepared, ensuring his loyalty was proven through real results. A wide, open view reveals a giant crater that dominates the land of Oni Island. This ancient crater is surrounded by steep cliffs that border directly on the expanse of the vast ocean. On the edge of the extreme crater, sturdy, traditional building structures can be seen with small wooden bridges connecting one side to the other. This settlement looks quiet yet majestic, standing right on the edge of the ravine that has been a silent witness to the long history of the country. Strong gusts of wind were created as a giant dragon landed gracefully in the crater area. On its back, Light, Princess Yotsuha, Eri, and Mei stood on a wooden platform. Their arrival was greeted by the hysterical screams of Bang Mitsuhiko, who was already waiting on the ground. With an urgent tone and a face full of worry, he shouted toward the princess, "Hime Miko!" "What is happening? Why did you bring them to this sacred place?" Mitsuhiko's face turned red with uncontrollable anger. He shouted loudly until his voice echoed against the crater walls, stating that the presence of this dragon entourage was a great insult to their ancestors. To him, allowing dragons under the command of the Witch of the Great Tower, who had a dark reputation, to set foot on the soil of the Oni Island nation was a scandal that would tarnish the honor of their nation forever. While pointing sharply toward Princess Yotsuha, who was still at a height, Mitsuhiko continued his harsh protest. His eyes bulged with emotion as he asserted that the princess's actions were not merely an administrative error, but a form of real betrayal against the nation's sovereignty. "Bringing dangerous foreign parties into the heart of our defenses is a great sin, princess. You have betrayed the trust of the Oni people," he asserted with a hoarse voice. Opposing Mitsuhiko's explosion of emotion, Princess Yotsuha responded with extraordinary calm. She stood straight on the dragon's platform, looking down with a gaze that was slightly demeaning. With a relaxed tone and a bit of sarcasm, she asked back, "Why do you look so panicked, Mitsuhiko? Is there something you are hiding that makes you look so hurried to kick my guests out of here?" Without waiting for an answer, Princess Yotsuha provided an explanation regarding the secret agreement she had arranged. She stated that as a high-ranking official, Mitsuhiko should not need to pretend to be surprised. The princess asserted that establishing contact with the Witch of the Great Tower was a strategic step to gain enough power to permanently seal the Oni god, a burden that had been carried by her lineage all this time. Hearing such a straightforward explanation, Mitsuhiko suddenly fell silent. The mouth that had been shouting earlier was now tightly shut, while beads of cold sweat began to wet his forehead. His facial expression changed drastically from anger to genuine tension. Disbelief emanated from his eyes. He did not expect the princess to have the courage to make extreme decisions that were beyond his group's control all this time. Trying to turn the situation around, Bang Mitsuhiko warned Princess Yotsuha again with a voice made to sound full of concern. He pointed toward Light's entourage and mentioned that they were master deceivers. "Do not be fooled, princess. That woman who claims to be the Witch of the Great Tower is just a foreigner falsifying the witch's great name to enter our territory. They are just taking advantage of your innocence." With forced conviction, Mitsuhiko shouted to his troops and the princess that the figure before them was a fake. He insisted that the individual who had been communicating with their clan had a different aura. He is not the same person. They are dangerous infiltrators trying to destabilize the Oni Island nation from within. We must act before they destroy everything. With a dramatic pleading tone, Mitsuhiko asked Princess Yotsuha to immediately get down from the dragon's back. He urged the princess to move away from that foreign group and run immediately toward his line of troops that were already on standby. "Hime Miko, hurry over here! Run toward us so we can protect you from the threat of this foreign party. Your life is in great danger as long as you are near them." Princess Yotsuha instead smiled faintly, a smile filled with sarcasm. With a very relaxed style, she started the conversation with a highly demeaning tone. "Is that so? You thought I would say that and immediately run in fear to you?" This short sentence was dropped like a bomb, showing that she was baiting Mitsuhiko's emotions and was not at all taken in by the old man's charade. The princess's facial expression turned firm and full of authority. She stated that only a truly strong figure could lead an armada of dragons of that size, so it was impossible for them to be fakes. "Do not play games with me!" she shouted with a thunderous tone of anger. While pointing toward the line of dragons still circling in the sky, she asserted that the power before them was absolute proof of the truth. Mitsuhiko appeared increasingly cornered. His face was now wet with cold sweat, and his eyes moved restlessly in all directions. He did not expect Princess Yotsuha to provide such strong verbal resistance in public. The mental pressure given by the princess began to crumble his self-confidence, and the shock over the situation developing beyond his plans made his body tremble slightly in front of his own troops. Princess Yotsuha's explosion of anger reached its peak. She shouted at Mitsuhiko and his followers, labeling them as traitors to the nation who were crazy with personal ambition. "I know all your rot," she exclaimed. She revealed that she held all the documentary evidence regarding the disloyal acts Mitsuhiko had committed all this time. "You will not be able to hide behind the mask of loyalty anymore. All the evidence of your crimes is in my hands." With restrained tears of anger, the princess cursed their sins of sacrificing the holy maidens of the past, including her own mother, for the sake of cruel rituals. "I will not forgive you," she vowed with a voice that was shaking but full of determination. She promised to capture every person involved in the bloody conspiracy without exception, ensuring that the vendetta of her family and predecessors was avenged. The atmosphere became eerie as a giant dragon stepped forward, standing tall and intimidating right before Mitsuhiko. The dragon's shadow swallowed the man's body. In the background, a high, majestic building structure was visible, where several other characters appeared to be standing on the balcony, watching the heated debate from afar with alert gazes, as if preparing in case a physical conflict broke out instantly. Seeing the situation beginning to fall apart, Mitsuhiko suddenly sighed deeply. The tension that had engulfed him seemed to evaporate, replaced by a cynical attitude of resignation. "Oh well, oh my," he muttered softly while shaking his head. That traditional expression showed that he felt this situation had become very troublesome and was no longer going according to the script he had originally arranged neatly in his head. Mitsuhiko spoke again with a voice that was now much calmer, almost cold. He explained that since Princess Yotsuha disappeared from her hiding place, he had deployed all his troops to search every corner of Onijima country without result. "I really did not expect," he said while staring at the princess, "that the prey I had been searching for all this time was hiding under the armpit of the Witch of the Great Tower." Facing Mitsuhiko's suddenly calm change in attitude, Princess Yotsuha did not budge. She only remained silent with a sharp gaze like a sword. Not a single word came from her lips, but the aura of hostility she emitted showed deep tension. She was assessing every move of the man in front of her, alert to any other trickery that might be unleashed by the traitor. Mitsuhiko gave a horrible, cynical smile. He said that the witch had done something very cruel by telling the bitter truth to the princess. According to his twisted logic, a holy maiden should have remained ignorant so that she could be a beautiful offering for the demon god. Ignorance is a blessing, princess. Being a sacrifice for the prosperity of the country is an honor you destroyed yourself. While waving his hand as if brushing off dust, Mitsuhiko muttered, "Well, enough. He admitted that although the current situation was slightly off from the initial plan he had meticulously arranged, it did not make him truly worried. His eyes showed that he still had an ace up his sleeve, and the presence of the witch or those dragons was just a small hurdle he had anticipated beforehand. Mitsuhiko then reached for something and held a large string of prayer beads in his hand. His facial expression turned very serious, with a sharp, cold gaze that radiated murderous intent. With a low, threatening voice, he closed the conversation. Because the situation has reached the point where the truth is revealed, then there is no other choice for you but to die here. Let us finish this the old way. Mitsuhiko's face suddenly turned savage and eerie. He took a deep breath before finally releasing a scream so loud that the veins in his neck could be seen straining. With his mouth wide open and eyes radiating madness, he gave the cursed command he had been preparing all this time. Rise, O demon god Kijin, destroy everything and show your true power to the world. A moment after that command echoed, the surface of the crater inside the mountain began to react horrifically. A rumbling sound from the bowels of the earth was heard, deafening the ears, accompanied by large bubbles appearing from the surface of a dark liquid resembling thick mud. The agitation signaled that something very massive and ancient was crawling upward, preparing to breathe the world's air after sleeping for centuries. From within the agitation of the boiling black mud, a terrifying giant creature emerged. Its body was wrapped in hard scales that looked like black steel shining under the dim light. Its size was truly extraordinary. Even the large buildings located around the lip of the crater looked like small toys when compared to its body height, which began to tower over the peaks of the buildings. Mitsuhiko, Oboro, and all the Oni troops standing on the ground suddenly fell silent. Fear crawled down their spines as they looked toward the cliffs and high buildings that were now covered by the giant shadow. The entity they summoned as God emitted an aura of darkness so thick that it changed the atmosphere, which had previously been full of provocative shouts, into a dead silence due to a very gripping sense of horror. The demon god had fully risen from its resting place. The creature looked up at the sky and opened its mouth very wide, revealing rows of sharp fangs capable of crushing even the bones of a dragon. With full force, it released a massive roar that shook the island's foundations, creating splashes of giant water and mud in all directions, signaling the return of the ruler of darkness to the human world. The sound of the demon god's roar continued to echo with an ear-piercing frequency throughout the area. The creature now stood straight atop the peak of a large hill, asserting its dominance over the entire land of Oni Island. Its long cry seemed to be the death knell, signaling the start of an era of destruction, making anyone who heard it feel that the hope for survival had vanished, swallowed by darkness. The massive tremors and horrific sounds were finally realized by the townspeople at the foot of the mountain. They came out of their houses with pale faces, shouting in fear while pointing toward the mountain peak that was now occupied by the massive monster figure. Look at that! On Mount Kijin, is the legend real? Is that really the demon god? They shouted with trembling voices, realizing that the day of judgment had arrived. The atmosphere in the city turned into total chaos. The residents who had previously felt safe now looked deathly pale, with eyes widened by trauma. They ran aimlessly while shouting in panic, "Disaster! The demon god has truly risen again." Their fear was not without reason. The ancient legend about the destruction brought by Kijin was now displayed clearly before their eyes, crushing the remnants of their courage. The demon god, Kijin, was now seen in its full form, standing firmly in the middle of a mountain valley surrounded by steep cliffs. Its massive size created an absurd sight. Even the large dragons flying around it now looked just like insignificant little flies. Its presence truly swallowed space and light, making it the only frightening center of attention. Mitsuhiko shouted with enthusiasm mixed with pure hatred. He introduced the creature as the god in the legend that would clean up his enemies. Devour them all, demon god. Eat that useless holy maiden and the foolish tower witch. Just like you devoured the previous sacrifices, do not let anyone remain, even those dragons, he shouted with a crazy laugh. As if understanding the command, the demon god responded with a much more massive roar that was capable of shattering the glass of the surrounding buildings. The vibration of its voice created a very strong air pressure wave throughout the area. Seeing such a real threat, the dragons on Light's side immediately flapped their wings harder and entered standby position, ready to face an attack from the legendary creature. In the midst of that chaos, Mitsuhiko showed a smirk filled with a sense of victory. His cunning face looked very satisfied as he watched the demon god begin to move according to his wishes. To him, all the sacrifices and betrayals he had committed had produced perfect results. He was certain that this moment was the beginning of his absolute power over Oni Island, regardless of the destruction he was causing. Princess Yotsuha remained standing straight in her position. Instead of trembling in fear, she only gave a short response with a humph murmur, which sounded very cold. She stared sharply at the demon god and Mitsuhiko with an expression that showed extraordinary steadfastness. To her, the monster's appearance was not the end, but the beginning of her plan to erase all the sins of the past that had haunted her lineage. On the balcony that served as a temporary shelter, Princess Yotsuha performed a shocking action. She slowly knelt before Light, witnessed by Mei and Eri, who were still wearing closed clothing. The atmosphere there suddenly turned very sacred and formal. In the midst of the thunderous monster roars outside, the princess's action showed a surrender and plea that came from the deepest heart. While clasping both her hands in front of her chest in a praying position, Princess Yotsuha pleaded with a trembling voice, "Master Dark, I beg you, avenge my grudge, the grudge of the holy maidens of the past, and my mother's grudge. I realize my power will never be enough to face this darkness alone." Tears began to well up in her eyes, showing how great a burden she had been carrying on her fragile shoulders all this time. Without much talk, Light responded to that plea calmly. He summoned a legendary katana from his dimensional stash, holding the uniquely decorated sword hilt firmly. Staring directly into Yotsuha's eyes, he gave a short but very convincing answer. "Just leave it to me." Those words sounded very authoritative, as if victory was already in his grasp at that very moment. Light gave a faint, confident smile to Yotsuha. "I will carry out this revenge with you," he said softly but firmly. Even though a giant dragon and a horrifying demon god were right behind him, Light showed no signs of anxiety at all. His extraordinary calm gave the impression that he was a figure far more dangerous than any monster on the island. Hearing the willingness from the figure she called Master Dark, Princess Yotsuha's face instantly blushed with emotion. She clasped her hands in front of her chest with an expression full of gratitude and sincere happiness. A great sense of relief engulfed her heart. She had finally found someone strong and sincere enough to stand by her side against the cruelty that had taken everything from her life all this time. However, that emotional atmosphere was disturbed by the sharp gazes of Mei and Eri, who were near them. Seeing Yotsuha's behavior, which appeared flirtatious and too close to Light, both showed expressions of jealousy that could not be hidden. One of them let out a short mutter while continuing to observe the situation carefully, realizing the existence of an awkward atmosphere in the middle of the battle situation. The demon god Kijin again released an ear-piercing "ooh" roar while leaning its body forward to pounce. However, before it could even move, the figure of Light, who was now known as Master Dark, had already launched at high speed. He flew through the air like black lightning right in front of the giant creature's face, ready to start a direct confrontation that would determine the fate of the entire island. The clash of extraordinary power exploded instantly. Master Dark moved so fast that his movements were only seen as action lines filling the battlefield. His sword slashes struck the demon god's hard body repeatedly with deadly precision. Every impact between the katana and the monster's scaly skin created sparks of bright energy, illuminating the dark crater with blue and white light. After launching a very powerful series of attacks, Master Dark was seen floating gracefully in the air. The impact of his recent attack was so extraordinary that it created a massive vibration on the demon god's massive body. A blinding white light explosion effect appeared at the point of his attack, signaling that the power he exerted was capable of shaking the defenses of a legendary entity that should have been impossible to wound by ordinary humans. The camera now zoomed in closer toward the demon god's head area. Although its skin was as hard as a mountain rock and covered with thick scales, small cracks and thin wounds could be seen due to Master Dark's attack. Although the wounds appeared small compared to its body size, The success in penetrating the god's defenses proved that the weapons and power possessed by Master Dark were on a truly different level. Mitsuhiko, who was watching the event from afar, immediately lost his composure. He looked very shocked. His eyes widened and his mouth opened without being able to speak. "What? How is that possible?" he shouted in a tone of disbelief. His conviction that the demon god was an unrivaled creature began to crumble upon seeing that the legendary creature could be wounded so easily by a foreigner. Oboro's face was now filled with beads of cold sweat streaming down profusely. He was frozen in the spot where he stood, feeling the pressure of the energy radiated by Master Dark from afar. An expression of deep fear adorned his face, as he realized that the young foreigner's power far exceeded all his calculations and expectations. He began to realize that they were not facing an ordinary human, but a disaster for their plans. Master Dark landed very calmly, his feet touching the ground without making the slightest sound. In the background, the giant body of the demon god, which had previously been so powerful, was now filled with glowing cracks due to the deadly attack it had just received. The legendary creature appeared to be starting to weaken, its massive body shaking violently as if the foundation of its power had been totally destroyed by one very precise slash from Master Dark. The atmosphere in the entire crater suddenly became silent, as if even nature was holding its breath watching that scene. Master Dark stood with his back to Mitsuhiko and Oboro, who were still frozen due to severe shock. At the top of the panel, a glimpse of Master Dark's eyes could be seen, radiating a deadly calm. There was no hesitation or fatigue there, only the cold gaze of a predator who had completed his task perfectly. This panel showed a point of view from behind Oboro, who was staring at the figure of Master Dark in the distance. With a slow but sure movement, Master Dark sheathed his sword back into its simple wooden scabbard. Oboro felt a strange shiver in his heart. He felt very familiar with the man's standing style, sword shape, and fighting rhythm. His breath began to quicken as he started to associate this figure with Light, his former partner. Master Dark was shown fully from a close distance. His dark cloak fluttered in the crater wind, while the mask covering the upper part of his face provided a mysterious, intimidating impression. His right hand casually held the sword hilt resting on his shoulder, showing extraordinary mental readiness. The aura he radiated truly dominated the battlefield, as if he were waiting for the next enemy to try their luck. With a heavy and authoritative voice, Master Dark mentioned the name of his martial arts style, Onijima style sword technique. He took a low stance with high concentration. This action was taken by Light deliberately. He wanted to show off the technique that was once taught by Oboro to him. This was a veiled message for his former master, a mental provocation designed to awaken dark memories about the student they betrayed. Although its body was already cracked, the demon god Kijin refused to just fall like that. It rose again, with glowing red eyes radiating infinite bloodlust. That giant figure now stood right behind a large torii gate, creating a very mystical and horrifying scene. A thick aura of darkness enveloped the surrounding area, as if the god were gathering the remnants of its strength for one final attack. Seeing the sword technique Master Dark had just mentioned, Oboro jolted violently. His usually calm face was now filled with confusion and genuine fear. As the troop leader, he felt his authority collapse in an instant. His mind swirled, trying to process how the secret technique of their clan could be mastered so perfectly by a foreigner who claimed to be Master Dark. Without giving the enemy a chance to think, Master Dark moved forward. His speed was so extraordinary that his body appeared to blur and leave a trail of shadows along his path. He launched like a bullet toward the demon god, creating a very strong wind pressure that made the ground beneath his feet crack and crumble. The momentum of his attack showed that this time he would not hold back in the slightest. "Ganseki Giri!" Master Dark shouted loudly. His eyes glinted sharply behind the slits of his mask as he swung his sword with a power capable of splitting a mountain. The name of this rock-slash technique was an iconic attack he had often trained with Oboro in the past. By shouting that name, Light openly dismantled his identity in front of the man he once considered a teacher, making the atmosphere become increasingly personal and heated. The sword strike was aimed directly at the center of the demon god's massive head. With a forward-leaning body position and an extremely precise swing, Master Dark looked like lightning splitting the darkness. There were no wasted movements. Every inch of his swing was focused on destroying the toughest defense of the giant creature. All the energy in the crater area seemed to be absorbed into the blade, which was now on the verge of impact. The impact created an extraordinary sight. A huge vertical slash of light split the demon god's body, as if the creature were merely made of paper. The power of Genseki Giri proved capable of exceeding the limits of human logic. The impact was fatal. The demon god's thick-scaled left arm was neatly severed and fell to the ground with a loud thud, proving that Master Dark possessed unrivaled destructive power. The demon god's massive body began to explode from within due to the residual energy left by the previous slash. Dark fluid resembling black energy sprayed out from its wounds, dirtying the crater area. Amidst the chaos of the explosion, Master Dark was seen jumping backward with elegant acrobatic movements, keeping his distance from the destructive impact of the creature that was now starting to crumble into shards of darkness. The demon god released a final, ear-piercing scream, "Gwa!" before its body completely vanished into dust. On the other hand, Mitsuhiko was seen shouting with a deeply broken and desperate expression. The ultimate weapon he had painstakingly awakened, the god that was supposed to give him absolute power, had just been completely defeated by a single individual in a short amount of time. After the dust of the battle began to settle, Master Dark walked away with a very relaxed pace. He sheathed his sword again with a cold click. Behind him, the remains of Kijin's body were still emitting thick black smoke. Master Dark muttered softly, "Only this much?" His tone sounded flat and slightly disappointed, as if the life-and-death battle he had just fought was, for him, nothing more than an unsatisfactory warm-up. While resting his sword on his shoulder, Master Dark let out a long sigh. "It seems I truly have no talent for swordsmanship," he complained with a cynical tone. He felt disappointed because his initial intention was to finish off the creature in one decisive slash without any drama, but in reality, he still needed a few movements. This comment was a high-level mockery for the Oni warriors, who had trained with swords their entire lives. Mitsuhiko completely lost his sanity. He shouted with a body trembling violently, "Impossible! This cannot be happening!" An overwhelming sense of humiliation burned his chest. Seeing the holy and mighty demon god have its arm severed and be destroyed by someone he considered a little brat was an insult more painful than death. Fear began to creep in slowly, choking his courage. The Oni troops led by Mitsuhiko and Oboro were now frozen in gripping darkness. They were all silent, their faces deathly pale, with cold sweat pouring down profusely. There was no fighting spirit left, only a deep sense of horror at seeing a man capable of defying the laws of nature and defeating their god so easily. Their logic was no longer able to process what they were witnessing. Focus shifted to Oboro's face, which looked deeply shaken. He muttered in a low, trembling tone, "This situation is truly beyond reason." He kept convincing himself that light should have died after falling into the bottomless Naraku abyss. However, the reality before him said otherwise. Returning from Naraku was considered impossible in their clan's history, but now that figure stood tall. Oboro kept observing every detail of Master Dark's movements from behind. The more he looked, the more convinced he became. The way the man swung his sword, his small habits when catching his breath, even the angle of his wrist when attacking, were truly identical to the basic techniques he had taught him before. There is no mistake. It is him, Oboro thought, with regret and fear mixed together in his chest. Master Dark suddenly stopped walking. He turned slowly, looking directly at the Oni troops led by Oboro. The atmosphere became so tense that even the sound of the wind seemed to stop blowing. Amidst the swirling smoke and dust from the battle, Master Dark's gaze locked onto Oboro's position. He was fully aware that his former master was now staring at him with deep suspicion and fear. Oboro and Mitsuhiko exchanged glances, but no words came out. Their expressions were equally filled with extraordinary anxiety. They began to realize the true identity behind that mysterious mask. Realizing that the brat they once cast aside had returned as an angel of death triggered a sense of horror far greater than when they faced any giant monster in this world. With a slow, dramatic movement, Master Dark removed the mask covering his face. A faint, meaningful, yet very cold smile played on his lips. "It's been a long time, hasn't it, Oboro?" he said, in a very calm tone that was nonetheless capable of freezing the blood of anyone who heard it. He finally called Oboro's name directly, confirming all suspicions and beginning a new chapter of his revenge. Master Dark's red eyes now glowed brightly, staring sharply at Oboro with pure murderous intent. "I have crawled back from the bottom of the Naraku abyss for only one purpose," he asserted with determination. His voice echoed in the silent crater, delivering a gripping closing statement. He returned not to negotiate, but to demand payment for all the suffering they had inflicted upon him. The atmosphere in the open area suddenly turned very eerie, as if the air around the large torii gate had stopped flowing. In the stifling silence, Light stood with unnatural calm, emitting an aura that dominated the entire place. On the other side, Oboro appeared unable to hide his shock. His body stiffened and his eyes widened upon seeing the figure who had suddenly appeared before him. This unexpected meeting created a distance filled with suspicion and high alertness from the opponent's side. Tension peaked as Oboro and Mitsuhiko truly realized who was standing before them. Oboro's facial expression changed drastically into a combination of fear and deep disbelief. In his panic, Oboro reflexively called out Light's name in a trembling tone. He questioned the existence of the youth who should have been dead long ago, considering this appearance an impossibility that defied his logical reasoning. To them, Light was just a ghost from the past, now risen again into the real world. Light responded to their panic in a very relaxed way, while his fingers gripped the sword hilt with conviction. Although his face was covered by a mask, he had expected that his identity would still be revealed through his fighting style. He realized that every slash and body position he demonstrated was a legacy of the sword style he had been taught by Oboro himself during the race meeting in the past. The technique once taught as a form of guidance was now, in fact, the weapon that would be used to destroy the master. The camera now seemed to provide a close-up on Light's hidden face, capturing the cold aura radiating from his gaze. In a murmur heard only by himself, he contemplated how long time had passed since the act of betrayal that almost claimed his life. 3 years he had spent in the darkness, harboring every wound and anger that grew ever larger. For the audience, following his story from the beginning, this moment was the turning point where the time frozen for 3 years finally began to move again toward judgment. Seeing Light's deadly calm, Oboro and Mitsuhiko seemed frozen in place, unable to move a single muscle. Cold sweat began to drench their temples as they realized that the figure before them was no longer the weak youth they could toy with. They were speechless, trapped in a torturous silence while their minds were filled with shadows of past mistakes. Pure fear began to creep across their faces, replacing the arrogance that had previously radiated so clearly. The view then shifted to show the vastness of the battlefield that would soon become a silent witness to a tragedy. Light began to recount the dark events of when he was betrayed and deceived by those he trusted, leading to his fall to the brink of death. He recalled how he fought at the bottom of the dark and cold Naraku abyss. In that deepest and most despicable place, he hardened his resolve and took a sacred oath to survive for one single goal: to take revenge on those who had cast him away. A sharp and intimidating light radiated from Light's eyes, signaling that there was no room for mercy in his heart. He stated with full conviction that the retribution he would carry out was something perfect and absolute, a plan that had no room for failure. His goal was not merely to kill, but to make his opponents feel suffering and despair many times greater than what he had felt while at the bottom of the abyss of destruction. From afar, Yotsuha, a shrine maid and princess, appeared to be standing and observing the situation calmly. Light asserted that his presence this time was not only for his personal affairs, but also acting as a representative for his client, Yotsuha. This meant that the punishment his opponents would receive would be twice as severe. Hearing the fact that their position was now increasingly pressured by this new alliance, Mitsuhiko began to look restless, and cold sweat flooded his body even more profusely. With a very dominant stance, Light stood straight, facing his enemies without the slightest bit of fear. He emphasized that the deadly despair he brought would soon swallow them all, uniting their ill fate with the fate of Oboro, who was already marked. The atmosphere in the entire area became very heavy and stifling, as if the fate of death was already standing right behind Mitsuhiko and his group. Full power was now in Light's hands, and the situation was completely under his control. Overwhelming panic began to envelop Mitsuhiko's side as he started to lose his sanity. With a tone full of confusion and anger, he kept urging Oboro to explain what was actually happening between them and the mysterious youth. Mitsuhiko began to realize that he had been dragged into a history of betrayal that was very dark and dangerous. The fear of past secrets that now haunted them made the coordination between them begin to crack and fall apart. Suddenly, the already tense atmosphere was shaken by a very massive and ear-piercing roar. The giant figure known as Kishin, or the demon god, began to rise, releasing a sound capable of shaking the ground and sky around it. A massive destructive power began to emanate from the monster's body, signaling that a great threat had fully awakened. The vibration of that sound was depicted with extraordinary visuals, showing how great the evil power was that now threatened the battlefield. Despite having previously received a fairly heavy attack, the Kishin showed extraordinary resilience by beginning to rise again slowly. Light observed every movement of the monster carefully, watching how the wounds on the creature's body seemed not to have a major influence on its power. He realized that this creature was not an ordinary opponent, but an entity that possessed immense life energy and was very difficult to topple with just one attack. Seeing the awakening of the giant monster, Light only gave a response that tended to be demeaning. He observed Kishin's movements with a cold gaze, as if he were looking at something insignificant. However, he could not hold back his annoyance toward the monster's roar, which kept piercing his ears. For Light, the creature's noisiness was more disturbing than the threat of its power itself, showing how high the level of self-confidence he currently possessed in facing any threat, no matter how great. Light then began to outline the initial step of his systematic revenge plan. He stated that as an opening, he would destroy the Kishin, which had all this time been the ace card and pride of Mitsuhiko. Once that monster was successfully removed, he vowed that there would be no more barriers that could protect Mitsuhiko and Oboro from his wrath. His main target remained the two people before him, and the death of the monster was just a protocol for starting the true execution. Hearing Light's taunt, Oboro exploded in anger and began to hurl insults. He called Light a low-caste human and a fake master who only survived due to pure luck and the assistance of the Witch of the Great Tower. Oboro warned sternly that Light should not become arrogant just because he possessed magic weapons from that tower, considering that Light's original abilities remained incomparable to the power of the demon god they possessed. The tension between Mitsuhiko and Oboro was inevitable, as they both prepared to launch a decisive counterattack. Oboro tried to calm his partner's emotions by promising a detailed explanation at another time, while Mitsuhiko, who was already impatient, instead ordered that the full power of the Kishin be unleashed immediately. He wanted to teach that low human a harsh lesson so that he would realize his true position under their feet, as well as to end the threat brought by Light's presence instantly. With a face full of pure hatred, Mitsuhiko raised his prayer beads high into the air while unleashing curses. He stated his desire to bury Light, along with the shadows of the Witch of the Great Tower who had been protecting him. Through a dark, sacred command, he instructed the Kishin to no longer hold back and show the full true power it possessed to destroy the enemy before them without leaving a single part of their body behind. Responding to its master's command, the Kishin released an explosion of black power that was very thick and terrifying into the air. The entire body of the giant monster was now shrouded in an aura of darkness that was very intense, creating a sight that seemed to swallow the light around the battlefield. The second roar it released sounded far more threatening, signaling that the creature had entered a full power mode capable of flattening anything that dared to stand in its way in the blink of an eye. Light looked slightly surprised to see the transformation experienced by the Kishin, especially when seeing the mysterious black mist that began to seep out of the pores of the monster's body. In his heart, he began to wonder if that dark substance was a physical manifestation of Onin or the very deep grudge of tortured souls. This change made him more vigilant, realizing that what he was currently facing was not merely physical power, but something far more mystical and dangerous to the soul. Seeing the momentary hesitation on Light's face, Mitsuhiko's side proudly flaunted the prowess of the Kishin's power they were controlling. They challenged Light to experience for himself the sensation of that extraordinary evil power, which was claimed to originate from an accumulation of endless grudges. They explained that the dark energy possessed very destructive properties, where anyone who touched it or even stood too close to it would lose their sanity and be trapped in eternal madness. The camera spotlight now focused sharply on the staring contest between Light and Mitsuhiko, creating a tension that could be felt through the air. Mitsuhiko, with a tone full of dark pride, began to explain the terrifying secret behind the black mist that shrouded the area. He explained that the darkness was not ordinary smoke, but a collection of pure grudges from thousands of sacrifices they had sacrificed and collected over many years. That mist was a manifestation of the suffering of trapped souls now ready to prey on anyone who obstructed them. The figure of the Kishin was now displayed in highly intimidating color visuals with glowing red eyes that pierced the darkness. Mitsuhiko, with a thunderous voice, asserted that the demon god possessed a unique ability to absorb all the grudges stored within it. That absorption process transformed suffering into extraordinary kinetic energy and magic, making the Kishin evolve into far stronger and more bloodthirsty than before. This power was the peak of the cruelty they had built for so long. Mitsuhiko's face was now filled with madness and overflowing anger, showing his deepest psychopathic side. With a terrifying, gleeful laugh, he stated that Light and all who were with him would soon follow the fate of the previous sacrifices to become food for the Kishin's power. Without the slightest hesitation, he gave an absolute command to the giant monster to immediately launch a destructive attack, as if he could not wait to see the youth before him crushed to pieces under the demon god's feet. The Kishin stood tall like a mountain behind the Torii gate, providing an apocalyptic sight as if the apocalypse had arrived. Under the giant's feet, Mitsuhiko continued to launch provocations by calling Light and his friends trash from a low race who were unworthy of standing before them. With a challenging tone full of arrogance, he invited Light to try attacking if he indeed had the guts, feeling that the power gap between them was no longer possible for a normal human to catch up to. In the blink of an eye, fast-paced action exploded when the Kishin swung its devastating attack toward the ground. The force of the impact was so extraordinary that it caused the ground to crack and large chunks of rock to shatter into dust that flew up to cover their view. However, in the midst of that chaos, Light displayed physical abilities beyond human reason. With very efficient and calm movements, he managed to avoid that fatal attack very easily, as if an attack that heavy were just a gentle breeze to him. Light was seen floating gracefully past the plume of dust, still rising high, maintaining his calm despite having just escaped death. While staring coldly at his enemy from the air, he muttered that if destruction and death were indeed what they wanted, then he would not hesitate to grant them. His tone showed no angry emotion, but rather a very terrifying certainty, as if he were delivering a death sentence to everyone there without any chance for appeal. The Kishin, feeling its attack failed, began to rampage even more fiercely, releasing a roar capable of collapsing the mental state of anyone who heard it. The monster moved wildly, creating violent tremors that shook the entire battle area to the point of causing surrounding trees to fall. The massive scale of power shown by the Kishin this time truly showed why it was called the Demon God, a force of nature that seemed impossible to be stopped by conventional weapons or ordinary magic. With a landing position that was very steady and balanced, Light stood tall again while directing his sharp gaze directly at Mitsuhiko and Oboro. Without the slightest bit of fear on his face, he stated with full conviction that right before their very eyes, he would destroy the Kishin they had been praising all this time. That statement was a hard slap to his opponents' egos, a promise that their pride would soon turn to dust under the slash of his sword. Light began positioning his sword in an attack stance. Then, with speed exceeding the limits of the naked eye, he dashed forward, piercing through the opponent's defenses. His facial expression was now filled with burning determination, casting away his previous calm for the sake of lethal aggression. He asserted in his heart that the existence of this disgusting monster must be ended right now, signaling that he would not let this battle last any longer than necessary. The scene closed with a very epic moment where Light had successfully shortened the distance and was now very close to the Kishin's giant body. Under the shadows of the black aura of grudges shrouding the monster, Light prepared to deliver his deadly slash. This position signaled the beginning of the true counterattack, where the roles of hunter and prey had officially swapped places. Light from his sword began to split the darkness, promising the beginning of absolute destruction for the demon god. Mitsuhiko laughed again with an arrogant tone while watching the Kishin roaring with extraordinary power. He mocked Light as a low-race brat who did not know his place, insisting that no matter how great the magic equipment was, it would never be able to match the power of the demon god they possessed. For him, Light's success in dodging earlier was merely pure luck that would not be repeated, and he was very certain that the youth was committing suicide by approaching the Kishin directly. Although his first attack appeared to be blocked by a layer of dark energy, Light maintained extraordinary calm. He muttered softly, as if giving a small appreciation that the Kishin was actually clever enough to use the Mist of Grudges as an additional defensive coating. Light acknowledged that the monster was slightly smarter than he had expected, because it had the instinct to protect itself from danger, but his tone still did not show the slightest worry about the stalemate of the attack. The spotlight returned to Light's eyes, which now radiated very high self-confidence, even tending to demean the opponent before him. He posed a rhetorical question to Mitsuhiko and Oboro, asking if they were truly foolish enough to think that the attack he launched earlier was the full power he possessed. That gaze seemed to say that everything that happened so far was just a warm-up and part of his game to see the extent of the opponent's true capabilities. Light's hand now gripped his sword hilt with pressure much stronger than before, channeling immense energy into his weapon's blade. He delivered a cold warning that if they thought his power was only to that extent, then they had made a fatal mistake that they would regret forever. The atmosphere around Light suddenly became very silent, as if nature itself were holding its breath, waiting for the massive explosion of power that would soon be unleashed by the swordsman. In a very dynamic color action panel, Light launched a follow-up attack with multiplied force. While launching a slash that split the air, he stated how naive his enemies were to think that the Mist of Grudges could protect them. The attack shot forward with purely destructive power, so much so that the defense of the Kishin's Mist of Grudges, which previously looked impenetrable, was now torn and destroyed like paper cut by a sharp knife. Mitsuhiko's expression instantly changed drastically. The arrogance that had been clearly displayed now changed into extraordinary shock and deep fear. He shouted in total disbelief, unable to accept the reality that their mainstay monster could be penetrated so easily. His eyes widened, seeing how helpless the Kishin's defenses were in the face of Light's true power, causing his conviction of victory to begin collapsing slowly and painfully. The Kishin's suffering reached its peak as its screams of pain echoed throughout the area. One of its giant arms was severed by Light's precise slash, creating a gruesome sight as the monster's body parts slowly disintegrated into shards of darkness in the air. Black liquid sprayed from the wounds, signaling that even though it was a godlike entity, it could still be wounded and destroyed by someone with greater determination and power. Light is now seen landing or standing gallantly on the injured part of the Kishin's body, showing absolute dominance over the monster. He speaks in a calm yet authoritative tone, stating the Kishin's identity as a creature that had long nested and preyed on the inhabitants of the Demon Island nation. Light appears to be reading out an indictment for all the sins the monster has committed, asserting that its time to continue preying on other people's lives has ended by his hand. Taking a very steady stance for his finishing move, Light focuses all his energy on a single point of attack. He states with determination that for the sake of settling his personal vendetta and also as a form of his responsibility to Princess Yotsuha, he will not show even the slightest mercy. The light from his sword now shines brighter than ever, symbolizing the cruel justice that he will soon inflict upon all perpetrators of past betrayals. The story concludes with a very intense scene where Light rushes at high speed toward the Kishin's head, With cold and indisputable authority, he orders the monster to yield its head obediently. There is no more room for resistance or escape. This attack is designed to end everything. The light of Light's sword, rushing toward the giant's neck, becomes the final sight, signifying that the dark history of the Kishin and its controllers will soon meet their end. The situation heats up as the Kishin again lets out a roar that splits the sky, a sound laden with ancient hatred. With overflowing anger, the giant monster swings its large hand, which resembles a giant pillar, attempting to crush Light, who is right in its path. On a visual scale that is very contrasting, Light appears so small and fragile compared to the massive body of the demon god. However, despite looking like an ant before a mountain, Light stands tall with a firm stance, ready to face that extraordinary physical force once again. While moving nimbly to avoid every sweep of the giant hand, Light begins to notice a change in his opponent's fighting pattern. He observes that, driven by blind rage, the Kishin is now ignoring the defensive mist of grudge that previously enveloped its body. The monster's focus is now entirely on offensive attacks, which automatically leaves open gaps at its vital points. Light murmurs to himself, acknowledging that the monster's bloodlust has become its greatest weakness, which he will soon exploit. Taking advantage of the momentum from the monster's negligence, Light darts forward with astonishing speed until he is now right in front of the Kishin's horrifying face. With his sword drawn and ready to strike, Light shows a very cold gaze, as if he is staring at an inanimate object that has no hope. In the brief silence before the attack is launched, he asserts that the time for the demon god to set foot in this world has ended, and this moment is the final line for the creature's existence. A truly horrifying moment occurs when the blade of Light's sword slashes right into the Kishin's wide open mouth. However, instead of blood spraying out, thousands of whitened human bones spill out from within the monster's body. This terrifying sight leaves Light stunned for a moment in the midst of his attack. The rain of countless human bones creates a sickening rattling sound as they hit the ground, revealing the dark truth that had been kept inside the demon god's belly all this time. The camera spotlight now shows Light's facial expression up close, capturing a flash of disgust and horror that he rarely shows. While staring at the pile of bones towering beneath him, his mind begins to process the bitter reality about the origins of the monster before him. He wonders inwardly if all these bones are the remains of thousands of innocent lives that have been sacrificed and preyed upon by the Kishin for years to satisfy the power lust of the Oni, making it a walking monument of death. Amidst the rain of bones still falling, Light stands frozen for a moment, surrounded by the remnants of past suffering. He truly did not expect that the entity which had been worshipped and boasted about by the Oni as a protector was actually just a rotten vessel created from a collection of grudges and the suffering of its victims. This reality further strengthens his resolve. This monster is no longer just a fighting opponent, but a manifestation of sin that must be purified immediately so that the spirits trapped within it can rest in peace. The increasingly cornered Kishin begins to gather its remaining energy, and this time it focuses a very massive grudge energy right at the base of its throat. A ball of darkness that is very dense and pulsating unsteadily begins to form, emitting an aura of death capable of making the surrounding plants wither instantly. Light realizes that the monster is preparing its final, most lethal attack, a blast of pure energy that combines all the remaining power of its grudges to destroy everything in one devastating sweep. As the energy ball almost reaches its saturation point, Light feels something unusual in the direction of the Kishin's gaze. He realizes that the monster is subtly changing the trajectory of its shot, no longer aiming directly at him while he is in the air. This triggers a major question in Light's mind. He begins to question why the rampaging creature is deliberately diverting its main target at such a critical time, indicating a hidden intention that is far more cunning than just a frontal attack. Still floating in the air in a very strategic position, Light directs his gaze downward, noticing the positions of Mitsuhiko, Oboro, and the people behind them. Instantly, he understands the cowardly tactic used by the Kishin. The monster is deliberately changing the angle of its attack in such a way that if light dodges, the devastating energy blast will continue to fly and strike the people in the back line. This is a moral trap, forcing Light to choose between his own safety or protecting those people. In a very dramatic color panel, the Kishin finally releases a tremendously massive blast of darkness energy from its mouth, creating a black pillar that swallows the sunlight. That dark light illuminates Light's face, which remains looking calm amidst the pressure of such powerful energy. While watching the monster's final awakening, Light murmurs with a slightly disappointed tone that for a creature touted to destroy the world, the end of this Kishin's journey feels very pathetic and classless. The blast of darkness energy now rushes at high speed, forming a wave of power that seems to swallow the entire space of the battlefield. The air pressure around the attack causes the ground beneath it to crumble and burn, creating a path of destruction straight toward Light. The visuals of this attack are so dominating, covering most of the view and giving the impression that there is no room for anyone to survive if they come into direct contact with the cursed energy. Facing the threat of death that is only a few meters in front of his eyes, Light does not show any signs of panic at all. With a calm movement, he draws a card from his gacha collection, a card that emits a very strong magical aura. While staring at the attack directed at him, he tosses a sharp jab in his heart about how cunning the monster's fighting style is, trying to use others as hostages. His emotional detachment allows him to remain clear-headed even in the most critical moments. The peak moment occurs in the color action panel as Light releases the power of the SSSR tier card he is holding. With one firm command to release its power, the high magic counter card immediately activates, emitting a blinding white light from his palm. Instantly, a giant, transparent hexagonal shield appears and stretches wide before him, creating an absolute defensive wall ready to receive the impact of the Kishin's darkness energy. The Kishin's blast of darkness energy finally hits Light's hexagonal shield with a force capable of shaking the foundations of the earth. However, instead of shattering into pieces, the magic counter shield looks very stable and begins to absorb the impact. The geometric patterns on the shield begin to churn and glow brightly, signaling that the energy reversal process is underway. The power of the Kishin's attack is now being recycled and compressed inside the shield to be returned with much more lethal intensity. The Kishin's expression caught by the camera now shows pure shock. Its red eyes widen upon seeing its strongest attack held back without remainder. However, because it is bound to its destructive instinct, the monster continues to blast energy from its mouth as if it could penetrate the shield with the volume of its attack. It is completely unaware that the more energy it exerts, the greater the destructive power being gathered by Light's shield to strike back at itself. The effect of the high magic counter finally works to its full extent with very stunning results. The stream of darkness energy that was previously directed at Light now reverses direction 180 degrees with doubled speed and power. The reflected attack strikes the Kishin's face and enters directly into its wide open mouth. As a result, a chain reaction occurs inside the monster's body. Large cracks begin to appear all over its rocky skin, and the giant body structure begins to crumble into pieces from within. From a distant viewpoint, the massive scale of the reflected attack is visible as it pierces through the Kishin's body and continues to fly far toward the open sea. The power of the reflection creates a line of destruction in the atmosphere, splitting the clouds and creating a very high explosion of water upon reaching the sea surface. The resulting air pressure creates a shockwave that can be felt kilometers away, showing that Light's power has now surpassed the limits of the gods created by the Oni. The ruins of the Kishin's body are now completely destroyed, becoming small fragments that no longer have any shape. There is no more intimidating giant figure. All that remains is black dust and pieces of rock falling like rain of debris in the Torii Gate area. The magic reversal process earlier has destroyed the core structure of the monster down to the molecular level, ensuring that the creature created from grudges will never be able to rise again forever. The impact of the reflected energy explosion continues to the horizon, where the remaining energy that was launched hits a high mountain peak or cliff located in the distance. A massive explosion is seen at the top of that mountain, releasing a mushroom cloud of dust and fire that illuminates the sky. This visual becomes silent evidence of how destructive the power just released by Light is, a warning to anyone who dares to challenge his power that he is capable of destroying a mountain with just one defensive move. The story of this section closes with the reactions of Mitsuhiko and Oboro, who are seen standing frozen in a state of extreme shock. In front of the torii gate, which is now surrounded by rubble, they can only scream in panic and question the impossible phenomenon they have just witnessed. Their minds fail to process how the strongest monster that served as their ace card could be destroyed in the blink of an eye by its own attack. The fear they now feel is no longer about losing power, but about realizing that they are dealing with a figure whose power is already beyond the reason of their world. The Kishin's condition is now truly at its lowest point after being exposed to the destructive power of its own reflected attack. The creature that once seemed invincible is now roaring in a very heartbreaking tone, a stuttering sound that depicts extraordinary suffering. Thick black liquid, which looks like rotten blood from thousands of grudges, sprays out from the cracks of its body, which is beginning to fall apart. In the distance, Mitsuhiko watches the scene with a pale face. All his conviction collapses instantly upon seeing the god he worshipped turn into a miserable pile of flesh and rock. Amidst the chaos of the giant body's ruins, Light moves like a white lightning bolt splitting the darkness. With extraordinary agility, he pierces through the remaining darkness, energy exploding around him without the slightest hesitation. His movements are very precise and efficient. Every swing of his sword is intended to sever the remaining energy nerves in the Kishin's body. This visual shows a great contrast between the slow destruction of the monster and the elegance of Light's final, very measured attack, as if he is dancing a dance of death on the ruins of his enemy's power. Light's ears catch the final roar from the demon god, which no longer sounds threatening but has changed into a weak moan laden with pleas for life. Light responds to that sound with a cold expression untouched by any pity at all. In his mind, he questions the drastic change in the monster's facial expression and voice, sarcastically asking if the creature that was previously so arrogant and bloodthirsty is now truly begging to be spared. For Light, that moan is merely proof that behind its massive power, the Kishin is still an entity trembling before true death. This panel provides a sharp spotlight on Light's face, showing a firm look of authority. With a very absolute tone, he declares that there is no room for mercy in this battle. Although he understands that the Kishin is merely an instrument or a tool used cruelly by Oboro and his friends, that does not erase the dark history. Light asserts that this monster is still a predator that has swallowed many innocent lives to fill its never-satisfied belly, so sparing it would only betray the suffering of the victims it has eaten. With one powerful leap that splits the air, Light glides toward the Kishin's head, which is the final remnants of the monster's consciousness. He raises his sword high, gathering all his remaining strength for a decisive vertical slash. His decision is firm. The main reason he must destroy this entity is because the Kishin is a manifestation of pure evil that is too great to be allowed to keep breathing in this world. This destruction is not just about killing an enemy, but about cleaning the black stain that has been polluting their land all this time. The peak moment of the Kishin's destruction occurs right above the sea surface, creating a scene that is both dramatic and relieving. The giant body that resembled a mountain is finally split in two and shattered into pieces into shapeless particles. The impact of the monster's remains into the ocean creates a giant water wave that soars high into the sky, as if the sea itself is trying to swallow every trace of the cursed demon god's existence into the deepest bottom of the ocean. After the dust and hot steam begin to subside, a vast scene is revealed that shows the permanent impact of the battle. A new crater or bay has formed in the area, changing the topography of the land due to the force of the extraordinary attack. Seawater begins to flow calmly to fill the new crater, while white steam is still billowing from the surrounding shattered coral cliffs. The atmosphere, which was previously full of evil aura, now begins to feel lighter, signaling that the great threat from the Kishin has officially ended and a new history will soon be written. Under a clear, starry night sky, Light's figure stands tall with unshakable authority. He appears to be floating in the air, illuminated by moonlight reflecting on his sword blade, which is now calm. Although the battle against the demon god has just ended, the aura of power radiating from his body has not faded in the slightest. On the contrary, he looks stronger and calmer than before. The light of the stars above him seems to be a silent witness to the great victory of a human who succeeded in overturning the myth of darkness that had been feared all this time. The focus now shifts to Mitsuhiko, who is still trapped on the battlefield, where his body appears to be trembling violently with fear that cannot be hidden. He has lost the ability to speak, only able to stare with a blank gaze toward the horizon where the Kishin has just vanished. On the other hand, Light's feet are shown landing steadily and silently on the cracked ground. This landing sends a very clear message to his enemies, that the God Destroyer has now returned to them to finish business that is far more personal. The story closes with a close-up on Oboro's face, which now appears mentally shattered. Cold sweat pours profusely down his forehead, and his pupils shrink to the smallest point due to the horror paralyzing all his senses. The expression summarizes a very painful realization that the protection from their god is gone, and he now stands naked without defense before Light. He fully realizes that the death knell is now ringing specifically for him, and his turn to experience perfect vengeance has arrived. The scene opens with the appearance of a giant crater stretching wide, a permanent wound on the Earth's surface, resulting from the clash of unimaginable energy. The land that was once sturdy has now collapsed, leaving a gaping hole that becomes silent, witness to the ferocity of the battle that has just ended. At the center of the destruction, there is a small island isolated in the middle of the crater. There lie the piles of flesh and the remains of the Kijin's body that have been shattered into pieces, signaling the end of the entity previously considered invincible. The difference in power scale is clearly visible in one gripping frame. In the air, Light's figure floats calmly, as if gravity does not apply to him, looking down with a cold gaze that does not waver. In contrast to that scene, Mitsuhiko is seen slumped helplessly on the barren ground. His body is trembling violently, and his face is filled with an expression of deep fear. He fully realizes that the gap in power between them is no longer just a difference in ability, but an abyss of difference between a mortal being and something far beyond it. Deep disbelief envelops Mitsuhiko's inner self to the point that he is unable to hold back his lamentations. He laments in despair about the Kijin, the demon god, who in the legend of his nation's founding was mentioned as a harbinger of the apocalypse if it were ever awakened. To him, it is madness to see that legendary entity, which should have been able to destroy the world, fall so easily. The thing that most hurts his pride is the reality that the figure who destroyed the demon god is just a youth from the human race, the kind he has always looked down upon. The atmosphere instantly changes into uncontrollable chaos when the guts of Mitsuhiko's comrades shrink and they begin to flee to save their own lives. In extreme panic, Mitsuhiko screams hysterically, begging them not to leave him alone in that cursed place. He curses and struggles, asking them to return and take him away. The fear of being left alone to face the wrath of such a strong enemy makes Mitsuhiko look very pathetic and lose his dignity as a warrior. Their escape attempt is brutally halted when a high-level magic spell is activated suddenly. The script for the Dorn, Fesseln, or Thorny Bonds technique appears in the air as sharp black roots rise from the ground. The roots move nimbly, like snakes, immediately wrapping around and piercing the bodies of Mitsuhiko and his comrades who are trying to escape. The sharp thorns completely lock their movements, ensuring that not a single one of them can shift even an inch from their current positions. The camera now zooms in on Ellie's face, showing streaks of annoyance beginning to appear clearly on her usually calm appearance. She seems truly sick of seeing the stupidity and lack of self-awareness shown by Mitsuhiko. For Ellie, Mitsuhiko's actions of daring to challenge Light are an insult to logic and true power. Her gaze reflects disgust toward those who do not know where their position should be before her master. Ellie appears before them with a calm demeanor but radiates an aura of threatening firmness. She states that there is a lot of information she must dig from them, as well as demands for accountability for their sins that have sacrificed so many lives for personal ambition. With a cold tone, Ellie condemns their actions of trying to escape after causing so much damage. Her presence exerts heavy mental pressure, making the fugitives realize that escape is not an option for them. In a condition drenched in cold sweat and panting, Mitsuhiko screams again in a very pleading tone. His face shows pure horror as he tries to interrupt Ellie's speech with useless pleas for mercy. He continues to shout, asking for time and an opportunity, hoping there is a miracle that can save him from the bad fate that is already before his eyes. However, his screams only bounce off the walls of the crater, having no effect on the situation he is facing. While standing gracefully on the back of a giant red dragon, Ellie continues her speech in a flat yet cruel tone. Although she doubts the traitors can break free from the thorny bonds she created, she decides to take additional precautionary steps. With a merciless attitude, she states her intention to break all their legs so that there is not the slightest gap for them to escape again. This decision shows Ellie's cold side in dealing with enemies who have betrayed Light's side. The silence of the crater is broken by a terrifying cracking sound, resembling the sound of dry branches being snapped by force. The thorny roots wrapping around them exert extraordinary pressure until it crushes the leg bones of the Oni, including Mitsuhiko's. Heart-wrenching screams of pain echo as their legs are crushed, ensuring that physically they will truly be unable to step again. This brutal action is the end for their escape attempt, leaving them in a state of paralysis and helplessness. After the situation below is under control, Light shifts his attention and calls Ellie's name in a calm tone. In the background, it is seen that Ellie has reunited with the other companions on a wooden structure resembling a balcony or observation bridge. They stand there while monitoring the situation from above, ensuring no more threats remain while waiting for further instructions from the leader who is still standing at the center of the battlefield area. Light's focus now shifts to a large energy ball that appears to be vibrating violently before him, emitting an unstable aura. With a very calm and highly concentrated expression, he murmurs something as if giving a sign that he is ready to start the next step. His calm presence in front of the threatening energy ball shows the full control he has over the situation, signaling that a new chapter of his plan will begin soon. Responding to Light's call, Ellie shows a very polite attitude by closing her eyes for a moment and placing her hand on her chest as a sign of respect. She expresses her apologies for the impolite behavior she may have shown previously in dealing with the traitors. After that, with graceful yet authoritative movements, she chants a mantra or secret command called Silent, a technique that is most likely used to dampen or seal something in that area. The viewpoint now shifts to behind Light's shoulder, showing his hand, which is already prepared to hold the sword hilt, in a position ready to draw the weapon at any time. In the distance, through the plumes of smoke and the debris of the destroyed crater, the figure of Oboro can be seen standing alone. Oboro is the main target of the grudge that Light has long harbored. The atmosphere between them feels very tense, like the calm before the coming of a great storm that will destroy everything. The image shows Oboro's face in close-up, revealing his mental state, which appears to be unstable. His eyes are wide open with unnaturally constricted pupils, a clinical sign of madness or overflowing euphoria. Although his body is covered with wounds from the battle, his facial expression shows a kind of horrific pleasure, as if the pain and destruction around him are something he truly enjoys. Seeing his enemy's reaction, which is far from normal, Light shows a slight sign of astonishment on his face. He appears surprised and confused at the same time, seeing how Oboro can show an expression of glee in the midst of a situation that is so critical and life-threatening. Light murmurs to himself, trying to process whether his enemy is truly laughing at his own suffering. This odd behavior of Oboro makes Light increasingly vigilant toward what might be planned by someone who appears to have lost their sanity. Oboro widens his smile to his ears, revealing an explosive passion on his blood-drenched face. He expresses extraordinary satisfaction because he was finally able to find Light again after a long and exhausting search. For him, this meeting is the highest achievement, a moment he has awaited with obsession. His enthusiastic expression shows that he does not care at all about the destruction surrounding him, as long as Light is in front of his eyes. While shouting with overflowing passion, Oboro proclaims that light is the embodiment of the absolute power he has coveted for years. He appears deeply obsessed with the sheer magnitude of the power light possesses, viewing him not as an enemy to be feared, but as an object of extraordinary worship. His madness shines through even more as he continues to talk about the potential of that power, as if he had found the most valuable treasure in the world. Responding to Oboro's insane declaration, Light can only remain speechless with a sharp, cold gaze, trying to gauge how much of a threat remains from the figure before him. Meanwhile, in the back position, Ellie, Mei, and Yotsuha show a very contrasting reaction. They appear deeply shocked and assume a high alert position, realizing that facing an enemy who is insane is far more dangerous and unpredictable than facing an enemy who is still thinking rationally. The story ends with a highlight on a very luxurious vanity mirror with a gold frame inlaid with beautiful gems, which is now in Oboro's grasp. Inside the mirror's reflection, the figure of Light can be seen standing tall with his sword in his hand. This reflection gives the symbolic impression that Light has now fully become the center of attention and the main target of Oboro's insane obsession, signaling that the conflict between the two will enter a stage that is far darker and more dangerous. Oboro raises the luxurious vanity mirror that he has been gripping tightly. With a face that looks disheveled by sweat and streaks of madness, he directs the shiny surface of the mirror straight at Light. His actions show that the gem-studded object is not merely a noble accessory or a simple decoration, but a magic instrument or a secret weapon that has a specific and lethal function, which is now fully locked onto the young man before him. The crater's atmosphere suddenly shakes violently as Oboro screams in a deafening voice, declaring his intention to absorb Light's massive power and make it his own. A moment later, an explosion of very bright white light erupts from the surface of the mirror. An extraordinarily large amount of energy overflows, enveloping the entire battlefield with blinding magic radiation, as if the mirror were pulling the essence of power from the air and compressing it into a single light attack. Amidst the violently raging energy storm, Light continues to stand with extraordinary calm. Even though particles of light and swirls of magic energy are flying and swirling around him due to the mirror's effect, he shows no signs of panic. His hand is still in a ready position, holding the sword hilt behind his back. He observes the phenomenon with focused eyes, letting the storm of light strike his body without shifting an inch from his footing. The intensity of the emitted white light grows stronger until it covers the entire field of vision. This panel depicts a crucial transformation process, or a massive power absorption that is taking place. Amidst the glimmer of light that begins to fade slowly, Light's face is seen for a fleeting moment, as if his image were being pulled or duplicated by that magic power. This transition creates the impression that something very fundamental about Light's identity is changing hands. After the explosion of light subsides, the energy remains leave plumes of smoke and thick fog that envelop the entire crater floor. Light, seen from behind, stands frozen while staring sharply forward. In the distance, through the gaps in the smoke that is beginning to thin, a figure that has just formed is visible. Gripping silence envelops the area, signaling that the mysterious process from the mirror has given birth to something that should not exist in that world. As the fog vanishes, a new figure emerges that truly shocks anyone who sees it. The figure has a face and stature that is very similar to Light, but with one striking physical difference: a pair of horns growing on its head. The imitation figure smirks widely with a sharp, cunning, and triumphant gaze. This proves that Light's power and form have been perfectly imitated by the mirror's power, creating an Oni version of the hero. The real Light cannot hide his shock while witnessing the strange sight before him. He stands stiffly with wide eyes, trying to process the reality that his enemy has now mutated into another version of himself. Seeing his own facial features on a creature that has Oni race characteristics creates a strange feeling mixed with anger and astonishment, realizing that his enemy has exceeded the boundaries of reason in his attempt to seek power. The silence is broken by a peal of uproarious laughter coming from the mouth of the imitation figure. With an overflowing tone of glee, it celebrates its success in obtaining the power it has craved for so long. It appears very proud and satisfied with the new body it now inhabits, feeling that all the struggle and madness have been paid off in full. Its laughter echoes throughout the crater, an expression of triumph from someone who feels they have just stolen fire from the gods. With a face that increasingly shows signs of madness, the double claims that it now holds control over absolute power. It states with full arrogance that with this new power, slaughtering the demon god or Kijin is just an easy matter, no different than getting rid of a pile of worthless trash. A sense of extraordinary superiority now envelops it, making it feel unrivaled by anyone in the world, including the original owner of the power. On the other hand, the real Light remains speechless, bowing his head until half of his face is hidden behind his collar. Contrasting with the hysterical laughter of the double that still echoes in the distance, the aura emitted by Light becomes very dark and unreadable. This atmosphere creates a suffocating tension, where the opponent's success in duplicating power actually provokes a very calm yet dangerous reaction from the real Light. Confusion begins to creep into Light's mind as he continues to observe the figure standing before him. In his heart, he wonders with disbelief about what method Oboro used to be able to transform himself into a form that is so identical to his own. Those questions rage in his mind, seeking the logic behind the magical transformation he has just witnessed, while he tries to assess how much the imitation's power resembles the original. From a distance, Light's followers observe the situation with deep anxiety. Ellie expresses her concerns, noting that even though it is a fake figure, its resemblance to her master is terrifying. Mei chimes in with a tone of horror, asserting that what they are seeing is not just an optical illusion or cheap magic, but a real existence capable of imitating Light's aura and physique. The fear of another evil Light makes the atmosphere among them become very heavy. The fake Light stretches his hands wide with euphoria, as if hugging the power that has just flowed into his veins. He murmurs about how extraordinary the sensation provided by the new body is, feeling a flow of massive energy even just by standing still. For him, every fiber of muscle and pulse of energy in his new body provides satisfaction he has never felt before, validating his obsession with the power held by Light. While casting a confident smirk, the fake Light feels that fear has now completely vanished from his soul. The feeling of omnipotence he possesses makes him feel very tough, to the point that he is convinced that facing even a demon god is no longer a thing to worry about. He truly feels he has surpassed his old limits as an ordinary Oni and evolved into something far higher, an entity that holds control over its own destiny. Light stares sharply at his fake twin with a gaze that is increasingly cold and serious. In a tone demanding an explanation, he asks about the secret behind that ability. He wants to know what object or magic is truly capable of copying his form and power capacity with such precision. This question is not just curiosity, but an attempt to identify the weakness of the magic instrument used by his opponent. The fake Light begins to remove the remnants of his old, tattered clothes, showing his new body, which now looks stronger and more powerful. While doing so, he confirms Light's suspicion and explains that all of this is thanks to the power of a sacred object known as Utsumi no Kagami, or the body mirroring mirror. He explains that the mirror functions by absorbing and manifesting the entire essence of the target's power into the user's body. Hearing the name of the object, Light repeats it with a thick tone of astonishment. The name Utsumi no Kagami sounds foreign to his ears, signaling that the object is not a magic item that is common or widely known in the magic literature he studied. He appears to be considering how rare and dangerous an object is that has the ability to duplicate a person's power totally without warning or clearly visible limits. The fake Light then provides further details regarding the characteristics of the object as a very rare and valuable one-time use item. He explains that the Utsumi no Kagami is a high-level magic artifact that has the unique ability to transform its user into an existence that is exactly the same, both physically and in power, as the reflected target. This explanation clarifies that the transformation he experienced is permanent, or at least very stable, until the battle ends. While taking a fighting stance and starting to unsheathe his sword, the fake light shares the history of his discovery of the object. He reminisces about his past while exploring a mysterious dungeon long before he became part of the Gathering of Races group. Since then, he has kept the mirror and felt that the object was indeed destined to be in his hands as the main key to achieving his biggest dream, which is to possess absolute power. The narrative closes with a focus on the fake light's gaze, which is filled with a fog of madness and deep obsession. He murmurs with conviction that the existence of the mirror was indeed created specifically to serve his ambition. In his mind, there is no more doubt that he has become the strongest figure in the world, and with this new form, he is ready to destroy anyone who blocks his path, including the owner of the original power, who is now standing before him. The fake light shows a cunning smile filled with overflowing satisfaction and triumph. He stands arrogantly, feeling the flow of new energy rushing throughout his fake body, which now resembles light. His confidence spikes sharply. He feels that with the form and power capacity he has stolen, there is no one left who can block his ambition. For him, victory is just a matter of time, because he feels he has succeeded in stealing the identity and power of the figure he fears and admires the most. While continuing to enjoy his power, the fake light begins to reminisce about his past with disdain for his old comrades. He considers them a bunch of fools who do not have long-term vision. In his memories, his old teammates only thought short-sightedly, wanting to sell the magic mirror he found for pieces of material money. He feels disgusted because they did not realize that the object had infinite value, far beyond any wealth that could be bought with money in this world. With a tone that changes to be very cold and cruel, the fake light reveals the dark secret behind the possession of the object. Without the slightest regret, he tells how he slaughtered all the members of his own team in one bloody night. He did not hesitate to finish off the people who had struggled alongside him to ensure that the magic mirror became his alone. His personal ambition had erased all humanity and loyalty he once had as an adventurer. Without warning, the fake light darts forward with speed that even surprises himself. With only one small push from his feet, he is able to teleport as fast as lightning, proving how devastating the potential of the new body he stole is. He feels very enthusiastic and cannot wait to test the limits of those physical abilities in a direct fight. His desire to feel the sensation of fighting using high-level power makes him even more ferocious in approaching the real light. A very fast and lethal sword attack is launched by the fake light toward Light's vital points. The air around them seems to be split by the slash. However, when he sees that Light is able to parry his death blow calmly, he shows a slight impression of being impressed. He acknowledges inwardly that Light has extraordinary endurance and reflexes, because he is able to keep up with speed that should be beyond the reach of normal humans in general. Light realizes that he cannot let his enemy continue to dictate the course of the battle. He then activates his legendary analysis eyes to dissect the status of the figure who is disguised as himself. Light's pupils begin to shine with mystic light as he pierces the layers of illusion and magic covering the imitation figure. He tries to find hidden information, trying to find out how far the mirror is capable of duplicating his true existence. The analysis results that appear before Light instead show a series of very strange and unnatural data. Although the name listed is Light Fake, with the race Human Fake, the level column cannot be read at all. Instead of numbers, all that appears are chaotic symbols, like $dollar number, and that blink irregularly. This indicates that the world's analysis system experienced a failure or glitch when trying to measure the original level of that stolen power. Seeing the peculiarity of that status, Light begins to realize there's a fundamental weakness in the imitation process. He concludes that even though the mirror is able to imitate the physical form and raw power visually, it failed to copy his unlimited gacha blessing. The absolute power that comes from a god's gift Ternyata cannot be duplicated by human-made magic items. This knowledge gives Light a glimmer of hope that there is still an abyss of difference between the real him and the imitator. Amidst the clang of swords that continue to clash, the fake Light's memories drift back to the time when he first joined the Gathering of Races group. The fierce battle in the crater seems to be the background for the flashback of his dark past. While their swords are locked, he continues to carry the burden of his history and obsession that has guided him to this point of vengeful meeting, creating a battle that is not just physical, but also ideological. The fake light explains that since he possessed the body-mirroring mirror, he has spent years traveling the world to find individuals who possess the purest power. His goal is only one, and very simple: find absolute power so he can imitate it and ascend the throne as the strongest being in the universe. For him, traveling the world is not to seek experience, but as a hunt for a figure worthy of having their entire life essence stolen. The battle heats up as the fake light begins to pour out his deep hatred. While swinging his sword wildly, he curses that due to the existence of light, whom he considers a fake that interferes, he had lost his direction in finding the true master. He asks, with a tone full of disdain, whether light can feel the humiliation and regret he experienced during his period of searching, which was full of uncertainty. The fake light's face now looks truly enraged and filled with a very thick aura of vengeance. With bulging eyes, he states his sadistic desire to kill Light in the most painful way possible. He plans to carve small wounds, starting from the tip of Light's toes, while the young man is still in a state of full consciousness. He wants to inflict pain, such that Light will curse the day of his birth and regret having dared to face him. Even though their attacks continue to exchange with extraordinary speed, the fake Light does not stop telling the continuation of his cunning story. He admits that after his failure to find the right target, he heard news regarding the existence of the Kijin, or demon god, who was sleeping. That information made him formulate a new plan that was far larger and more terrifying, changing the direction of his obsession from finding existing power to creating his own power that he could control. He explains his strategy that rather than wasting time looking for a master whose location is mysterious, he prefers to pour all his energy into strengthening the demon god whose location is certain. Light appears very surprised to hear how cunning and structured his enemy's plan is. He did not expect that the awakening of the Kijin, which almost destroyed the world, was actually the result of the cold manipulation of someone obsessed with power. With a very evil smile, the fake Light begins to reveal the darkest side of his plan. Without any moral burden, he admits to having bought human slaves in uncountable numbers. He treated those slaves arbitrarily as living sacrifices, whose lives were sacrificed to provide a supply of energy to accelerate the demon god's awakening. For him, human life is no more than fuel for the achievement of his personal ambition. Light responds to that heinous confession with a very cold voice, stating that all the dirty efforts made by his enemy have now ended in vain because he has already defeated the Kijin. However, the fake Light responds very casually and dismissively. He considers the failure of his original plan as just a fun mistake, because through this battle, he instead obtained direct access to steal Light's form, which is actually far stronger than the Kijin. Hearing the confession about thousands of human slave lives sacrificed just like that, the anger within Light begins to reach a boiling point. The atmosphere around them suddenly feels heavier due to Light's peaking anger. He repeats his enemy's statement about the human slave sacrifices in a suppressed, growling tone, emphasizing how inhumane those actions are in the eyes of Light, who highly values the lives of his companions. While continuing to clash swords with full power until it sparks fires that illuminate the crater, Light snaps at his enemy in a demanding tone. He wants to know exactly how many human lives have been buried under that insane ambition. That question is thrown not because he expects an accurate number, but as a form of harsh condemnation over the loss of humanity in the figure who is now standing there wearing his own face. The answer given by the fake Light instead shows even more how damaged his conscience is. With a very cold and uncaring gaze, he asks back in a very dismissive tone. For him, remembering the number of low races he has slaughtered is impossible and useless. He considers those human slaves as insects whose numbers do not need to be remembered after being stepped on, showing how deep his hatred for the human race is. The panel closes with a close-up of Light's face showing extraordinary anger, greater than he had ever felt before. His eyes shine with a sharp, burning light, while his teeth are clenched tight, holding back a surge of emotion ready to explode. With deep hatred, he curses the imitator, calling him a bastard who has absolutely no manners or respect for life. The battle is no longer about victory, but about judgment over cruelty. The sword fighting between the real Light and his double takes place increasingly fiercely, triggering sparks that illuminate the crater floor. The fake Light shows extraordinary arrogance by underestimating every defense built by Light, claiming that his parries are too weak and fragile. With confidence, he states that in a condition of equal physical power, he is the one who will emerge as the absolute winner because he masters the legendary Kijima sword technique, a technical advantage he believes Light does not possess. While continuing to maneuver in the devastated crater area, the fake Light relentlessly unleashes provocations to break his opponent's mental state. He keeps his distance nimbly while mocking Light thoroughly, stating that the young man has absolutely no natural talent for the art of sword fighting. To him, Light is just an amateur who happens to possess great power. So in a battle that relies on technical skill and precision, Light is considered to never have a chance to win against him. Driven by a spirit of overflowing madness, the fake Light begins to chant one of the deadliest secret techniques of the Kijima school known as Maki Gumo, or spinning cloud. Instantly, a thick green energy aura appears and spins rapidly around his body, creating an intimidating whirlwind of sharp wind. He then lunges forward like a raging storm, focusing all of that destructive energy toward his sword to destroy Light in one decisive strike. The devastating attack hits the ground and creates a massive energy explosion, splitting the battle area into two. However, amidst the plumes of smoke and shaking ground, Light demonstrates extraordinary motor skills by performing a highly precise acrobatic movement. He jumps backward with perfect timing just a few milliseconds before the death blow touches his body, causing the massive attack to only strike empty space. The impact of the Maki Gumo technique reveals a horrific scene around the crater. The energy released by the fake Light is so strong that it is able to split the surface of the water in the middle of the crater and trigger a large wave that hits the cliff walls. Explosions of dust and stone debris fly in all directions, proving that the scale of power released by the imitator is indeed massive and almost resembles the original power usually displayed by Light in battle. Without giving Light time to breathe, the fake Light attacks again with another variation of the Kijima school technique called Mina Mo Giri, or water surface slash. He slides very low over the ground, moving like a shadow, sweeping across the water surface to target Light's feet with a very fast horizontal slash. Although this attack is very difficult to detect due to its low position, Light remains standing vigilantly, his eyes never leaving any movement, no matter how small, made by his opponent. In the midst of his relentless attacks, the fake Light shouts that he feels indebted because Light has given that absolute power through the mirror's reflection. As a vicious form of repayment, he promises to kill Light quickly without inflicting unnecessary torment. He feels highly superior, confident that the combination of Light's high-level body and his own Kijima sword technique proficiency has created the most perfect warrior figure that has ever existed. Entering the peak of his attack, the fake Light launches an ultimate technique called Sakasa Ryuze, or inverted meteor. His sword emits a very bright and blinding golden yellow light, turning the dark crater atmosphere into a brightly lit area. With a shout full of rage, he dives sharply from the air toward Light, carrying a massive load of energy, as if a meteor were striking the earth from below to above to pierce the opponent's defenses. However, an extraordinary sight occurs when Light is instead seen flying and hovering very nimbly in the air. With highly graceful and calm movements, he dances between the giant pillars of light generated by the meteor attack. The aerial mobility Light possesses makes him appear like a creature unbound by the laws of gravity, consistently avoiding every point of energy explosion with ease, so that the physical attacks of the fake Light cannot touch him at all. Witnessing Light being able to move freely in the air, the fake Light instantly stops and shows an expression of deep shock and annoyance. While landing on the ground that is still emitting smoke, he realizes that he has made a fatal error in his calculations because he forgot to consider that aerial mobility ability. He murmurs with extreme annoyance to himself for not realizing earlier that the light he is facing now possesses flight abilities he cannot fully replicate. Nevertheless, Oboro, who is trapped in the imitation form, immediately calms himself and feels satisfied again. He considers Light's flying to be just a way to delay his demise a little longer. He actually feels grateful because, by being forced to move using full power, he is becoming more accustomed to and synchronized with his new body. To him, every second he passes with this massive power is proof that he has reached a far higher level of existence. With wide, horrific laughter and a face filled with madness, the fake Light exclaims that this is the true form of the absolute power that has been his life's goal. He feels that with the energy he now possesses, there will not be a single creature in this world, human or god, capable of matching him. He proclaims himself as the only sole ruler who holds control over that infinite power, drowning in the delusion of his own greatness. Light responds to all those arrogant claims with an expression that is very calm, cold, and almost dismissive. He states that the absolute power his enemy is proud of is actually far weaker and more pathetic than he previously imagined. In a flat tone, Light even admits to feeling stupid for having exerted full concentration to dodge, even though those attacks are considered by him to pose no significant threat. Hearing such a biting taunt, the fake Light's laughter immediately stops. He stands stiff and stares at Light with an expression of confusion mixed with disbelief. He seems lost for words and is only able to murmur shortly, feeling deeply insulted because the power he considered unrivaled is called weak by the person whose power he stole. His massive ego is severely wounded by hearing such a low assessment of his achievements. After a moment of silence, the fake Light attempts to draw his own conclusion with a very cynical tone to calm his heart. He murmurs that no matter how high a level someone achieves, the basic nature of low races, like humans who are full of lies, will never change. He convinces himself that Light's previous words are just empty bluffs from someone who is actually feeling cornered and terrified of facing death. While posing with a dismissive style to retaliate against Light's taunt, the imitator accuses Light of just trying to engage in mind games. He considers Light's strategy to provoke his composure a very boring and archaic move, a typical way of defending for a low race that has already lost hope and is desperate. He feels he remains in the dominant position and will not be trapped by words he considers mere blather. However, Light begins to explain the harsh reality of what is actually happening in a very serious tone. He asserts that he is not provoking at all, but merely stating the technical facts before him. Light explains that if the mirror had truly succeeded in imitating his level 9,999 perfectly, then the destructive power of the sword techniques released earlier should have been far more destructive. The fact that those attacks could still be avoided easily proves that the imitator's power is just a cheap replica that does not reach his original level. Light provides a deeper and more technical analysis regarding the true capacity of that imitation form. Based on the physical sensation he felt when their swords clashed, Light estimates that the level reached by Oboro at this moment is actually only in the 5,500 range. Although he admits to not knowing the exact number, because he did not have the chance to use the appraisal ability on that magic mirror, Light feels very confident in his intuition. For him, that number already explains why the imitator's attacks feel so shallow in his eyes. Hearing such a sharp and accurate technical analysis, the fake Light jumps in surprise again. He appears deeply shaken and did not expect Light to be able to dissect his power limitations just through the short exchange of attacks that had just occurred. His face, which was initially full of arrogance, is now colored by doubt and fear that begin to creep in. He realizes that the secret of the absolute power he was proud of has been dismantled by the opponent he was supposed to surpass, creating a massive mental shock for his ego. Light draws the final conclusion that the imitation process performed by the fake Light has reached its maximum limit, or that such is indeed the original performance quality of that one-time use magic item. With a calm yet piercing tone of voice, he states that, in the end, the fake Light has failed to imitate him perfectly at all. That imitation is just a shell of an imitation that failed to touch the core of the actual power, leaving the imitator in an illusion of greatness that is fragile and baseless. While continuing to look down on his enemy, Light continues his explanation with a tone that belittles his opponent's obsession. He emphasizes how ironic it is to see the fake Light constantly babbling about the concept of absolute power, even though Light himself, as the owner of the original power, has never once thought that he possesses absolute power. For him, arrogance over singular power is a sign of weak character, and Oboro's obsession with the title of the strongest is just proof of how shallow his enemy's understanding of the meaning of power is. Light asserts with full authority that even if he did indeed possess absolute power, and the imitator succeeded in duplicating it perfectly, he still would not feel the slightest bit of fear. For him, someone who only relies on great power, but stands alone without a sincere purpose like the fake Light, is not a significant threat. He believes that power driven only by individual greed will never be able to defeat something that has a stronger foundation than just level numbers. Deciding to end the war of words, Light prepares to show the true difference in class between them. He lifts a magic card that emits blinding light into the air, a rare artifact containing extraordinary energy. With full authority, he calls out the command, "Release," to break the power seal of the card. The atmosphere around the crater instantly turns very heavy, signaling the activation of a high-level magic that will drastically change the course of the battle. A notification window appears magically in the midst of the breaking flashes of light, showing the name of the ability that has just been activated, namely, "You Are Ability, Sense Copy." This is a highly rare, ultra-rare level ability imitation technique that is only possessed by individuals with extraordinary talent like Light. This panel emphasizes that what Light is about to show is something that exists in a dimension far different from the cheap imitation magic used by Oboro previously. As that ability activates, thick purple light begins to slowly envelop Light's hands. Small energy particles of the same color appear to fly and dance around him, creating a beautiful yet threatening sight. This ability manipulation process is taking place stably, where Light begins to absorb or duplicate techniques from his companions to be used in one integrated attack that will prove the superiority of his vision of power. Light stretches his hand forward with a gaze that is very sharp, cold, and full of determination. Suddenly, from the tips of his fingers, purple energy threads begin to form and shoot wildly into the air. The presence of those threads creates very strong atmospheric pressure in the entire crater area, making the air feel as if it is being sliced. Every strand of thread carries a very thick battle intent, ready to surround and destroy the enemy standing before him. Oboro, who is still in his imitation form, suddenly flinches in surprise when he realizes his body is starting to get injured mysteriously. Without any visible physical attack hitting him, fresh blood begins to spurt from several parts of his body that have been sharply sliced. He stares wide-eyed in confusion, trying to understand what is happening to him. He feels as if the air around him has turned into thousands of invisible blades that have started to tear his skin slowly but surely. Those purple energy threads glide at extraordinary speed, splitting clusters of clouds in the sky that are now starting to turn pitch black. This attack looks like a lash of pure energy, slicing through the air with highly accurate precision. The movement of those threads is very nimble and lethal, targeting every gap in the enemy's defense with an accuracy that cannot be avoided by normal physical movements, creating webs of death that begin to imprison the imitator. Screams of pain begin to escape the fake Light's mouth as his body is continuously sliced by the increasing number of energy threads. Amidst his opponent's suffering, Light stands tall calmly and states that he will show power that can never be reached by someone who only fights alone. He emphasizes that the power he is using now is something that cannot possibly be imitated by Oboro, because the source of his power does not originate from personal ego, but from something much broader. Mei, one of Light's loyal servants, who watches from a distance, stares at the sight with a face full of pride mixed with surprise. She explains to her companions that the technique currently being demonstrated by Light is actually her own ability, namely Magic String. She feels very honored to see her master capable of imitating and using her magic thread technique with a level of proficiency that even exceeds her own original ability, proving the strong bond between them. The final panel shows the figure of Light standing very gallantly on the front line, stretching out his hands, which emit a glow of magic thread energy that blinds the eye. Behind him, Ellie, Yotsuha, and Mei stand tall with full loyalty, providing moral support and full trust to their master. With a burning spirit and unwavering conviction, Light exclaims that he will show the true meaning of power to Oboro, which is the infinite power born from the synergy between himself and his friends. Then it presents a quite gripping sight. In an arid, mountainous area with severely cracked soil, Light stands calmly facing his enemy, who is in the distance. The view in the sky is no less majestic, where a giant dragon flies across the horizon while carrying several figures on its back. Meanwhile, in the bottom right corner, a character can be seen running away, adding a dynamic feel to the opening of this chapter. The focus now shifts entirely to Light. He stands tall, with his signature combat robe fluttering slightly, exuding a very strong aura of self-confidence. His gaze is sharp, as if he has already locked onto his target and knows exactly what needs to be done. In the background, the sprawling cracks in the soil become silent witnesses to how intense the atmosphere is in that location, especially with the presence of other characters who still appear to be running fast on that damaged dirt path. The atmosphere turns tense as the fake Light, or Oboro, is shown to be in a desperate condition. Cold sweat pours down his face, which shows an expression of disbelief mixed with horror. In his mind, he wonders if his body has just been sliced by very thin and almost invisible threads coming from Light's hands. Besides the pain, he also feels very surprised and shocked because Light calmly refers to the people around him as his companions. Next is a close-up on the lower part of Light's face. In a very calm and controlled tone, he begins to provide a hypothetical. Light brings back the memory of his bitter past, referring to the moment when he was betrayed by the fake Light's group and his friends. He speaks as if reflecting on the path of life he has traversed since that lowest point in his life. Light then explains further regarding the philosophy of his power. He feels that even if he were destined to be strong by coincidence through his own efforts, that still would not be enough. Without the presence of the companions who are at his side now and the extensive knowledge they share, Light is certain he would never be able to approach the hidden truths of this world, let alone carry out his great mission of revenge. While closing his eyes for a moment, Light continues his narrative more emotionally, yet calmly. He admits that if he had chosen to move alone, he would certainly be blind to the direction. He would never have been able to obtain a single clue regarding the identity of the mysterious existence that had destroyed his hometown. In fact, he feels it would be impossible to be able to find and protect the important figure in his life, namely Yume, without the help of others. A flashback panel appears that warms the atmosphere, showing the faces of Light's comrades in arms, like Mei, Eli, and the others. In his mind, Light gives an honest admission that without them all, his life might have ended a long time ago. He feels it is highly likely that he would have been killed halfway without having the chance to realize who the true enemy he had been calling master all this time was. Mei responds to Light's sincere statement with a very humble attitude. She closes her eyes slowly and places her hand on her chest as a form of deep respect. Mei feels that all the praise and recognition given by Master Light feels too excessive for them, because for Mei, serving and fighting alongside Light is a natural obligation. Eri, who appears to no longer be wearing the Great Tower Mage robe, also chimes in with an expression full of overflowing joy and gratitude. She feels that fate bringing her together with Master Light was the greatest blessing in her life. For her, being able to be at Light's side and fighting together is the pinnacle of happiness that cannot be compared to anything else in this world. Returning to the current situation, Light stares at his enemy with a gaze full of courage. He states firmly that it is the support from his companions that makes him have not the slightest bit of fear toward an enemy who is only standing alone. On the other hand, Light's enemy begins to show signs of being pressured. His face starts to sweat, and his expression appears shaky after hearing Light's convincing argument. The fake Light, feeling offended, immediately screams in full rage. He considers all of Light's talk about cooperation and companions to be nonsense that is completely useless in battle. For the fake Light, the only relevant thing in this world is absolute power. He believes that as long as someone possesses unrivaled power, sentimental things like friendship are just dirt that will only hinder progress. With a face that turns sinister because it is controlled by hatred, the fake Light begins to mock Light thoroughly. He feels Light can talk sky high about his companions only because Light has never directly felt what he calls the true absolute power. This mockery is intended to break Light's mental state and show that their difference in level is very vast. Facing the fake Light's rage, Light remains very calm. He closes his eyes for a moment, as if absorbing his enemy's words without feeling disturbed. He then repeats the phrase regarding the absolute power mentioned by the fake Light in a very flat tone. Not the slightest bit of fear or intimidation is radiated from Light's face, making the fake Light's mockery seem to recoil back onto himself. Light then opens his eyes and stares straight at the fake Light, who is still standing in the distance while gripping his sword. In a steady tone, Light challenges the fake Light's gaze. He says that if indeed the fake Light deifies that power so much, then Light does not mind showing something that will change his enemy's perspective totally. With full self-confidence, Light states his ambition to surpass the fake Light's definition of absolute power. He plans to do so not just with his personal power, but by combining all his abilities with the power he obtained from the close relationship with his companions. This is a declaration of war showing that team synergy is far stronger than individual dominance. Seeing the change in that atmosphere, the fake Light immediately takes an attacking position. Although he continues to belittle Light, his body language shows high vigilance. He senses a strange aura starting to radiate from Light's body. By holding his sword tightly, the fake Light watches every movement Light makes in the middle of that quiet mountainous area, preparing to face whatever is about to happen. While swinging his weapon with full force, the fake Light shouts loudly, warning Light not to belittle him. He attempts to launch a fast and strong counterattack. The fake Light tries hard to physically prove that his power, which stands alone, is still far superior and more real compared to the team cooperation theory echoed by Light. The fake Light shouts again with a tone full of self-confidence, claiming that he has already understood all the tricks often used by Light. He warns Light not to think that the same strategy or way will be able to deceive him for the second time. The fake Light feels he has already read all of Light's attack patterns and is certain he will not fall into the same trap. Light pays absolutely no heed to the fake Light's shouting and warnings. He begins to focus and activate his secret ability. With one firm command to release his power, Light triggers the ability from his highly rare, ultra-rare level card, namely Imitation Ability, or Sense Copy. Light begins to glow around his body as the process of activating that ability begins. As soon as that ability is active, miraculously, a figure of Light appears looking like he is wearing Aoyuki's clothes, with a cheerful and spirited facial expression. Light appears complete with his large-sized combat equipment. His sudden presence provides a surprise in the middle of the battlefield, where he is seen already fully prepared to provide assistance to Light in facing the fake Light's onslaught. Seeing the new form shown by Light, his companions provide a reaction that is very enthusiastic and slightly comical. Some of them appear to blush while covering their mouths, feeling that the cat-eared headgear Light is now wearing is very suitable and looks adorable. There's even one of them who shouts emotionally that Light is the figure of destiny that has been sought all this time. This panel provides a deep technical explanation regarding the Imitation Ability Ultra Rare card. This card has a mechanism that is very unique, where the user can imitate the abilities of any target, provided that the target is being thought of or imagined clearly in the user's mind when activating the card. This is an ability of adaptation that is very extraordinary in a battle. However, that explanation also exposes the existence of a quite significant limitation. The opponent's abilities cannot be imitated if the user does not have an accurate understanding regarding how that power works. Furthermore, The power generated from this imitation only reaches around 70% of its original power. The issue of whether the user can truly master that technique perfectly also remains a challenge in itself. The fake light truly exploded in anger after seeing what happened. He felt deeply insulted and toyed with by Light. To him, Light's actions of mimicking his appearance and even making cat-like sounds in the middle of a life and death battle was a major affront to his dignity as a serious warrior. With an expression that actually looked cheerful and carefree, Light continued to make characteristic cat sounds while launching a counterattack using a large chain weapon. At the end of the panel, it is explained that using this card does indeed have side effects on the user's visuals, where a portion of the appearance or characteristics of the targeted subject will automatically be reflected on Light's appearance at that moment. The fake Light tried to remain calm by dodging narrowly while continuing to belittle the attacks coming his way. In his mind, he considered Light's attacks mediocre and nothing special. He even felt very confident in the absolute power he had just obtained, so he doubted whether such attacks could touch his skin. However, behind the fake Light's arrogance, there is a hidden explanation that the item Light is using, the Beast Chain, is not just an ordinary chain accessory that people often see. The narrative then reveals the true identity of the weapon. The Beast Chain turns out to be a magical weapon classified in the fantasy class, a tier of weaponry that is very rare and extraordinarily powerful. Its main advantage lies not in its physical strength alone, but in a special function it possesses: automatic tracking capabilities. Once a target has been designated by the user, this chain will continue to chase and lock onto that target with no room to escape. Suddenly, the atmosphere changed drastically for the fake Light. His face, which had previously been full of mockery, now turned shocked and deathly pale as he felt something cold and hard suddenly snare his neck with great force. He was completely taken aback because he did not realize exactly when the chain had managed to sneak up and catch him. Disbelief filled his mind, as the defense he was proud of was breached so easily without him realizing it in the slightest. Light seemed even more enthusiastic in this fight. While emitting a cry that mimicked a cat sound with full cheerfulness, he yanked and pulled the magic chain with great force. The chain's high-speed movement created a strong momentum, dragging the fake Light's entangled body toward a certain spot in the middle of the vast battle area. Light seemed to be in full control of his enemy's movements. The next scene shows just how helpless the fake Light was before Light's power. His body was pulled upward and now hung stiffly against the cliff wall due to the magical chain's coils. The fake Light's facial expression showed extreme fear mixed with deep shock. He just realized that in such a hanging position, he was fully under Light's control and play, with no chance to launch a counterattack. After being hung for a moment, Light delivered a final pull that slammed the fake Light's body extremely hard against the rock cliff. The impact of the collision was so devastating that it created massive destruction to the rock formations in that mountain area. Rock debris flew in all directions, becoming clear evidence of how terrifying the pulling power and physical strength of the Beast Chain weapon being wielded by Light were. The focus is now on the fake Light's suffering. His face grimaced in extreme pain as his body struck the hard stone wall. He could only scream in agony due to the sudden attack that could not be anticipated at all. The physical damage he received was completely real and very palpable, tearing down bit by bit the pride he had boasted about at the beginning of the fight. In stark contrast to his enemy's condition, Light appeared very agile and energetic. He jumped and moved freely in the air before finally landing gracefully on a pile of rocks. While continuing to emit cheerful, cat-like cries, Light seemed to really enjoy every second of his new power. In the distance, thick dust still appeared to be flying, covering the area where the fake Light had just been thrown hard. At the bottom of the small crater created by the impact, the fake Light appeared slumped and limp. The ground around him was severely cracked, showing the magnitude of the energy that hit him. He could only moan softly with an expression filled with confusion and disbelief. The power he had been proud of all this time seemed meaningless when faced with the combination of tactics and magical weapons used by Light. Without giving his opponent time to breathe, Light launched another relentless series of attacks. While continuing to make cheerful sounds, he attacked the fake Light, who was still struggling to crawl up from the rubble. The attacks came so fast and continuously that the fake Light could only let out moans of pain without having time to put up any significant resistance. He was truly forced to be an easy target for Light's ferocity. The situation in the mountainous area is now completely chaotic. Explosion after explosion occurred at various points due to Light's indiscriminate attacks. The light of the attacks struck from all directions, creating a scene that was terrifying yet impressive. Amidst the turmoil, there was a contrast between the cheerful cries from Light's side and the constant screams of pain coming from the fake Light, who was on the edge of defeat. This panel shows a wide view of the battlefield, which has now been devastated. Thick smoke and dust rose high into the sky, covering the view of the arid mountains. In the middle of a large crater resulting from the fight, the fake Light is seen lying helpless. Meanwhile, Light's magic chain still appears, stretched out long in the air, as if ready to move again at any moment if ordered by its master. With the remnants of his strength, the fake Light tried to catch his breath and rise again from the pile of rubble. However, his condition looked very concerning. He was coughing violently, and his body was covered in wounds and dust from the relentless attack earlier. Every movement he made looked very heavy and labored, showing that his stamina had been completely drained by the barrage of magic and physical attacks from Light. On the other hand, Light stood very calmly and looked relaxed, as if he had just finished a light warm-up. He began to tidy up his chains, which occasionally clinked softly. With an expression that seemed funny yet held a mocking tone, he again made a spoiled cat sound. For Light, the fight, which for the fake Light was a matter of life and death, looked like nothing more than a fun game to pass the time. The fake Light, who was still sitting limply among the rocks, felt his dignity was truly being trampled on. He growled in anger, feeling deeply insulted for having to fight someone who constantly used silly cat language. He snapped at Light, considering such an act a childish thing that stained the sanctity of a battle between knights. To the fake Light, Light's attitude was the highest form of insult. While holding back his overflowing anger, the fake Light began to try to analyze the situation. He wondered to himself if the great power Light showed had strange conditions or prices. He suspected that it might be possible that Light was forced to speak using cat language as a form of contract or a certain sacrifice in order to access such powerful strength, because to him, it did not make sense if done without a reason. Hearing the know-it-all analysis from his enemy, Light just closed his eyes with a very relaxed expression. He then gave an answer that broke all of the fake Light's theories. Light explained in a calm tone that there were actually no restrictions, contracts, or strange sacrifices as imagined by the fake Light. He did all that not because he was forced by power requirements, but for a much simpler reason. While beginning to walk away with a light step, Light gave an additional explanation. He said that the reason behind his cat-like behavior was because the original owner of the ability he was currently imitating always acted like that. Light emphasized that he was only embodying and mimicking the original personality of the power owner so that his imitation would be more perfect and authentic while the fight lasted. Light's explanation only made the fake Light feel even more insulted and toyed with. His anger exploded until he growled loudly, calling Light's name in a tone filled with deep hatred. He felt like nothing more than a toy in Light's eyes, and the reality that he lost to someone who was role-playing made him feel very small and insignificant. Light did not take his enemy's anger to heart at all. Instead, he prepared again to use his other UR level card. With full concentration, he again called out the command to release the power of the sense copy card. Magical light shimmered again around his body, signaling that he would soon change form and ability to adapt to the next battle strategy. Light's form slowly changed back, and this time he imitated the appearance and aura of Ellie. In the distance, Ellie, who saw this, felt very moved to the point of tears. She felt very happy and proud that Master Light was willing to choose and use her form in a fight as important as this. For Ellie, it was the highest form of recognition that Light could give her. The focus now shifts to Light's hands, which are moving agilely to cast a magic spell. Very dense magic energy began to gather and rotate around his hands, creating an intimidating aura. This signaled that Light was preparing to launch one of the high-level magic attacks that was Ellie's main expertise, showing how perfect his imitation ability was. Now, Light appeared to be hovering in the air, surrounded by 4 magic books that were shining brightly. This scene looked very grand, yet terrifying to anyone who saw it. The fake Light, who was below, could only stare at the sky with full vigilance. He realized that the scale of the magic attack Light was preparing this time was at a much larger tier than his previous attacks. Without wasting time, Light immediately showered the area with a barrage of magic attacks. First, he cast the Earth Chain magic, which instantly locked the fake Light's movements so he could not run away. That attack was then immediately followed by a very heavy acid rain magic, drenching the entire battlefield with lethal and destructive acid liquid. The fake Light was truly tortured under the downpour of magic. He groaned in pain as he felt his body become very heavy and stiff due to the effect of the Earth Chain. He screamed loudly as those attacks hit his body in succession. The area around him was also destroyed, proving how deadly Light's imitation magic power was, capable of duplicating Ellie's power with a very high level of precision. Light had not finished showing his power. He continued his series of attacks by casting the Hellfire Angel magic, which he then combined with the Star Shoot technique. Instantly, a giant angel figure made of burning flames appeared behind him. The figure spewed out extremely intense and lethal hot energy, pointing directly at the position of the fake Light, who was already cornered. At its peak, the combined attack created a massive energy explosion. The light of the explosion was so bright that it rose high to pierce the clouds, destroying the rock formations around it into dust. On the other hand, the fake Light could only scream in fear when seeing the scale of that highly irrational attack rushing toward him. He realized that even his absolute power might not be enough to withstand such devastating destruction. The impact of the powerful magic attack Light had just unleashed looked truly insane, even if monitored from a distance. A large mountain in the area seemed to shake violently, as if a tectonic earthquake were occurring. The peak of the mountain emitted plumes of black smoke that rose high due to the energy explosion concentrated there. The entire mountain area that was previously dry was now increasingly covered by thick dust flying about, creating a very gloomy and gripping atmosphere. Slowly, the dust covering the battlefield began to thin and reveal a contrasting scene. Light appeared standing very calmly, with his back to the camera, with Ellie's imitation form still clinging to him. He did not appear to have a single scratch, while in the distance, the fake Light looked wretched, lying in the middle of an extraordinarily vast crater of rubble. The destruction around the crater became proof of how brutal the power that had just hit the area was. Light then began to speak in a tone that sounded quite dismissive. He mentioned that what he had just used was only a degraded imitation or a knockoff version whose power had already decreased. Even so, Light gave a little acknowledgement that the fake Light was quite tough because he turned out to still be able to survive. According to Light, the fact that the fake Light was able to withstand the copy attack just by focusing on total defense was something quite impressive for an enemy of his level. The fake Light's condition at this moment is truly at rock bottom and very concerning. His entire body is full of gaping wounds, he looks to be coughing up blood violently, and his hands are shaking heavily while trying to rise by leaning on his sword, which is stuck in the ground. Although his physique is shattered, his eyes still emit a fire of deep hatred. He feels very frustrated because of the bitter reality that he is truly helpless before Light. With a voice trembling from pain and anger, the fake Light began to shout hysterically because he felt that what he was experiencing did not make any sense at all. He felt it was very strange how superclass items like the imitation mirror could appear one after another so easily in a single battle. To him, the appearance of rare items in succession like that violated all the logic he knew about the world of magic and battle. The fake Light, who had started to lose his sanity, again snapped at Light with full emotion. He demanded an answer as to where Light could actually get super items or rare items that should have been very difficult to find. The fake Light felt very pressured and intimidated not only by Light's physical strength, but also by the unlimited resources that seemed to flow out of his enemy's pocket without stopping. Hearing that desperate question, Light only responded with a very calm facial expression while slowly closing his eyes. He explained that he did not need to bother looking for those items in any special place or legendary location. Light revealed a great secret, that all those miracles were thanks to the unique ability he possessed, which was known as Infinite Gacha. Light continued his explanation with a relaxed style as if chatting normally. He explained that as long as the Infinite Gacha ability was active, he had access to bring out any card as much as he wanted. This is what technically made Light an unpredictable figure, because he could change forms and modify his powers infinitely to adapt to whomever the opponent he was facing. Hearing that explanation, the fake Light immediately shouted in disbelief and accused Light of bluffing. He claimed that based on the in-depth investigation his group had done in the past, Light's Infinite Gacha had been confirmed as a trash gift that was completely useless. The fake Light felt devastated because the information he had held on to all this time turned out to be completely wrong and actually became the cause of his own destruction. While holding back the stinging pain spreading through all his nerves, the fake Light continued to growl with a face that already looked shattered. He began to wonder to himself with an emotional tone about what kind of power Light actually possessed. To him, the way that gift worked really did not make sense, and seemed to violate all the rules of the game and the order of power that existed in their world. The camera now focuses on the lower part of Light's face, which begins to show a cold and serious expression. He said that he actually had no intention or obligation to explain the true truth to the fake Light. However, Light admitted that it was indeed true that at the time the betrayal happened, everyone did consider his power to be nothing more than trash that had no value at all. Light then lifted his face and looked at the fake Light with a very sharp gaze, as if judging his enemy. With a firm and authoritative tone, he stated that it was time for them to end all the nonsense and this long battle. He mentioned the fake Light's name directly, giving a signal that the final act of this revenge drama would soon reach its climax. The fake Light appeared standing, with legs trembling violently while occasionally groaning in pain. Blood continued to flow from his wounds, yet he still forced himself to grip his sword even though his hands were almost out of strength. He was truly cornered in that arid, rocky area, looking like a soldier waiting for a death sentence from his executioner who stood gallantly before his eyes. Light's hand now appears to be holding a card in an inverted position very steadily. In his heart, Light reflected for a moment on his life's journey. He admitted that he himself had never once felt like the strongest person in the world. However, all the suffering, betrayal, and struggle he had gone through had guided his steps to reach a point as far and as extraordinary as it was now. Without wasting any more time, Light again stretched out his hand as a sign of final preparation. He activated another high-level card by calling out the keyword to release its power. Light began to radiate from the UR Sense Copy card he was holding, signaling that Light would once again imitate a great ability to launch a finishing attack that would end everything. The energy collected in that card suddenly broke and exploded into a very blinding light, illuminating every corner of the battlefield. The fake Light, who saw the sight, could only be stunned with an extremely horrified expression. Cold sweat poured down his face as he realized that this incoming attack was the end of his journey, and he had no way to stop it at all. This panel presents a very vast view of the mountains, where the aura of Light's power began to overflow and envelop the surrounding atmosphere. In his inner narrative, Light said with a very authoritative tone that if someone wanted to be arrogant and call themselves the strongest, then he would be happy to show what the true meaning of the word strongest was to the world. This chapter closes with a focus on Light's face, which has a faint smile, a smile full of confidence and absolute victory. He only uttered one short word that had a very deep meaning, as if giving his enemy one last chance to prepare themselves before the final execution began. That smile seemed to say that the fake Light's fate was completely sealed in Light's hands. On the final panel, Light is seen holding a weapon in the shape of a staff or a large sword hilt in a very steady and intimidating position. While staring straight at the fake Light, who was already helpless, he threw out a final challenge so that the fake Light could at least show strength comparable to his current power level. The This closing sentence confirms how far the gap in the cast of power was between them, ending this chapter with the absolute dominance of the main character.